Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the world of the filthy rich in Edwardian England, the era of elegant gowns, towering hats, and absolutely rancid hygiene. We're talking about the people who owned half of Britain, threw parties that cost more than your house, and somehow convinced everyone they were civilized despite bathing maybe twice a year and smelling like a perfume counter caught fire in a cheese factory. So before you settle in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. A huge thank you to the viewer who suggested this topic. Your idea shapes the content and helps the channel grow, and I'm genuinely grateful. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Somehow it's always 2 AM somewhere. And hey, the channel is now live on Spotify too, links in the description if you want to check it out there. Now, dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise, get comfortable, and maybe tuck your feet in so the imaginary servants can't judge your lack of a personal valet. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it was really like to be disgustingly wealthy in Edwardian England? Did they actually bathe, or was that just for peasants? What did they eat when they had literally everything? How many rooms can one person possibly need? Could you survive a single dinner party without using the wrong fork and causing a scandal that would ruin your family for 3 generations? Would you last a day wearing a corset so tight your organs rearrange themselves? Or would you faint into your caviar and never recover? And how exactly do you spend money faster than a small nation's GDP while still looking dignified? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1905. You're obscenely rich. Your bed has more pillows than a hotel, your servants have servants, and you're already late for an 11-course breakfast. Good luck. You open your eyes. In a bedroom the size of a tennis court. The ceiling is 15 feet high, painted with cherubs who look vaguely judgmental. Your bed, a carved mahogany monstrosity, is draped in silk and surrounded by velvet curtains thick enough to muffle a scream. You're alone, of course, because your spouse sleeps in an entirely different wing of the house. Welcome to Edwardian marriage, separate bedrooms, separate lives, and a shared commitment to pretending everything is fine at dinner parties. Your bedroom is just one of 50, maybe 70 rooms in this house. Honestly, you've lost count. There are entire corridors you've never walked down, staircases that lead to wings you've forgotten exist, and rooms that haven't been opened since your grandfather died. Somewhere on the 3rd floor there's probably a sitting room slowly being reclaimed by dust and spiders, but you'll never know because you don't go up there. That's what housemaids are for. The furniture in your room cost more than most. People will earn in a lifetime. That wardrobe, hand-carved walnut imported from Italy. The dressing table, French naturally, because everything good must be French. The mirror is so large it required 6 men to carry it upstairs, and it's framed in gold leaf that's already starting to flake because your house is drafty, damp, and impossible to heat properly despite having 20 fireplaces. Speaking of heat, it's freezing. It's always freezing. Your bedroom has a fireplace, yes, but it went out sometime around 3 in the morning, and no one has relit it yet because your chambermaid is probably still lighting fires in the 12 other bedrooms that need warming before the rest of the household wakes. You burrow deeper under your down-filled duvet, one of 7 layers of bedding, and try to remember why being rich is supposed to be pleasant. Outside your window, the grounds stretch for acres. Manicured lawns, ornamental gardens, a lake with swans that hate everyone, and a folly your great-uncle built because he thought it looked romantic. You can't see any of it from bed because your curtains are still drawn. Thick, heavy velvet curtains that block out light, sound, and apparently joy. They'll stay closed until your maid opens them, because God forbid you do something as vulgar as opening your own curtains. Your day hasn't even started, and you're already surrounded by more wealth than entire villages will see in a generation. And yet, you're cold, alone, and vaguely aware that somewhere downstairs your butler is already awake, silently judging you for still being in bed at 7:30 in the morning. This is your life. A mansion so large you could host a small army, so grand that foreign dignitaries are impressed when they visit, and so impractical that it cost a fortune just to keep the roof from leaking. You don't clean it, you don't maintain it, and you definitely don't know where half the rooms are, but it's yours, all of it. Every cold, drafty, ridiculously expensive inch. And in a few minutes, a servant will knock softly, enter without waiting for a response, and begin the lengthy process of turning you from a sleeping aristocrat into a fully dressed, publicly presentable member of high society. But for now, you're just a person in a very large bed, in a very large room, wondering if you should have married someone whose bedroom was at least on the same floor. Before your feet even touch the floor, a lady's maid or valet has already appeared like a well-dressed ghost. They've been awake since 5 in the morning, preparing your clothes, drawing your bath, and quietly judging every life choice you've ever made. These people know everything, your schedules, your secrets, your questionable spending habits, and they're contractually obligated to pretend they don't. Your lady's maid has been with you for years. She knows your measurements better than you do, which dresses you hate, which shoes pinch, and exactly how you like. Your hair arranged. She also knows about the love letters hidden in your escritoire, the flask of brandy in your dressing table, and the fact that you've been secretly corresponding with someone you absolutely shouldn't be. But she'll never say a word. Not to you, anyway. Downstairs is a different story. Below stairs, there's an entire parallel universe operating with military precision. The butler runs the male staff with an iron fist and a permanently disappointed expression. The housekeeper commands the maids like a general deploying troops. The cook rules the kitchen with threats, wooden spoons, and the constant anxiety of having to produce 5 meals a day for people who eat like it's a competitive sport. These people know more about your household than you do. They know which guests are rude, which marriages are failing, and which lord drank too much port and insulted the hostess at last week's dinner. They know because they were there, invisible, efficient, and always listening. You think your private conversations are private? They're not. There's a footman standing 3 feet away staring at the wall, pretending he can't hear you argue with your husband about money. Your valet knows you're losing your hair. Your lady's maid knows you're gaining weight. The housekeeper knows you're falling behind on payments to the wine merchant. And the butler knows everything, always, because it's literally his job to know. He manages the household, handles the accounts, hires and fires staff, and somehow keeps 30 people organised, paid, and loyal. You think you're in charge? You're adorable. The servants rise before dawn and work until late at night. They light fires, carry water, prepare meals, clean rooms, polish silver, press clothes, and maintain the illusion that your life runs effortlessly. They're not allowed to be seen unless they're needed. They use back staircases, side doors, and hidden corridors so you never have to encounter them unexpectedly. It's like living in a house full of very efficient ghosts, and the hierarchy among them is more rigid than the aristocracy they serve. The butler and housekeeper are the elite, dining separately from the lower servants and expecting to be addressed as Mr. or Mrs. even by their peers. Footmen outrank maids. Ladies' maids outrank housemaids. Everyone outranks the scullery maid, who spends 14 hours a day scrubbing pots in a basement that never sees sunlight. They gossip, of course. They always do. Your secrets travel from lady's maid to housekeeper to cook, to footman, and eventually to the servants in neighbouring houses, who share information like intelligence operatives. That scandal you thought was private? Every servant in Mayfair knows about it by tea time. But here's the thing. They need you as much as you need them. You provide employment, housing, meals, and a position that offers status in the servant world. They provide the labour that keeps your entire life functioning. It's symbiotic, deeply unequal, and absolutely essential. Without them, your mansion becomes uninhabitable, your lifestyle impossible. So when your lady's maid enters silently, opens the curtains and murmurs, "Good morning," in a tone that reveals nothing, remember, she knows everything, and she'll never tell, at least not to your face. Getting dressed in Edwardian England isn't something you do, it's something that happens to you. For women, it's a multi-hour ordeal involving corsets, petticoats, layers of fabric, and a structural engineering degree. For men, it's slightly less torturous, but still requires help because apparently wealthy people forgot how buttons work. Let's start with the women, because their morning routine is basically a gentle form of Victorian torture. First, your lady's maid helps you into a chemise, a thin cotton undergarment that's the only layer between your skin and the horror show to come. Then comes the corset, the dreaded, whale-boned, lace-up instrument of agony that will reshape your internal organs for the sake of fashion. Your maid pulls the laces tight, then tighter. Then you wonder if breathing is really that important. The goal is an 18-inch waist, which is approximately the circumference of a reasonably sized grapefruit. Your ribs compress, your lungs shrink, and your stomach relocates to somewhere near your throat. But you look fabulous, so it's fine. Totally fine. Just don't sneeze, laugh, or eat. Next, petticoats. Not one, not two, but 3 or 4 layers of starched cotton or silk designed to give your skirt the proper shape. They're heavy, hot, and make using the toilet a logistical nightmare. But fashion demands volume, and volume demands petticoats, so you suffer through it while your maid adjusts, smooths, and tucks. Then comes the dress itself. Edwardian gowns are architectural marvels. High collars, long sleeves, elaborate embroidery, and enough fabric to clothe a small family. The dress fastens in the back with approximately 40 tiny buttons, hooks, or snaps that you couldn't possibly reach yourself. This is why you need a maid. No one can dress themselves in this era. It's physically impossible. But wait, there's more. You need a belt to cinch the waist even further. You need a collarboned and starched so aggressively it could double as a neck brace. You need gloves, long, white, kidskin gloves that button at the wrist and must be replaced the moment they show any sign of wear. You need jewellery, rings, brooches, necklaces carefully chosen to complement but not overwhelm. And then there's your hair. Oh, your hair. Edwardian hairstyles are gravity-defying monuments requiring pins, pads, false hair pieces, and about 45 minutes of patient labour. Your maid sections, teases, twists and pins until your hair sits in an enormous pompadour that adds 6 inches to your height and weighs roughly as much as a small cat. If it collapses during a dinner party, you'll be socially ruined. Finally, the hat. Because leaving the house without a hat is basically admitting you're a vagrant. The hat is massive, laden with feathers, flowers, ribbons, or possibly an entire taxidermied bird. It's secured with hat pins so long they're essentially weapons. You could commit murder with one of those pins, and frankly, after 2 hours of getting dressed, you're considering it. Men have it slightly easier, but only slightly. First, the undergarments. Cotton drawers and an undershirt, then a dress shirt with a detachable collar so stiff it could slice bread. Cufflinks, because buttons are for peasants. A waistcoat buttoned precisely. A morning coat or frock coat, depending on the occasion, tailored so perfectly it might as well be a second skin. Then the tie. Edwardian men wear cravats or ascot ties, which require folding, pinning, and a valet's steady hand. Get it wrong, and you look like you dressed yourself, which is the fashion equivalent of showing up to a wedding in pyjamas. Shoes must be polished to a mirror shine. Trousers must be pressed with a razor-sharp crease. Gloves are mandatory for going outside. And don't forget your top hat, cane and pocket watch. All essential accessories that signal you're a gentleman of means and not some common tradesman. By the time you're fully dressed, it's been 2 hours, you're exhausted, and you haven't even had breakfast yet. But you look impeccable, uncomfortable, immobile, and vaguely suffocating, but impeccable. And that in Edwardian England is all that matters. You descend the grand staircase to the breakfast room, where a meal fit for a small army awaits. Kippers, eggs, bacon, kidneys, toast, marmalade, porridge, cold meats, pastries, fruit, and something called devilled bones that sounds like a threat. You're expected to eat it all, or at least pretend to, because waste is vulgar, unless you're wasting it on servants, in which case it's fine. The breakfast room is smaller than the formal dining room, but still large enough to host a board meeting. The table is set with china, crystal, and enough silverware to confuse a royal. Each place setting includes multiple plates, 3 forks, 2 knives, a soup spoon, a butter knife, and a small fork specifically for fruit, because using the wrong fork for melon is apparently a war crime. Footmen stand silently along the walls, ready to leap into action the moment you need more tea or toast. They don't speak unless spoken to, and they definitely don't make eye contact. It's like being served by very polite robots programmed to judge you silently. The food is displayed on a massive sideboard that looks like an altar to excess. Silver chafing dishes keep everything warm: scrambled eggs, poached eggs, fried eggs, and boiled eggs, because apparently one style of egg isn't enough. There's bacon, of course, thick cut and crispy, sausages in links and patties, grilled tomatoes and mushrooms for those pretending to be healthy. Then there are the kippers, smoked herring that smell like the ocean had a fight with a campfire. They're salty, fishy, and beloved by people who clearly have no sense of smell. Kidneys sit in a pool of gravy, looking exactly like what they are. Internal organs for breakfast. Devilled bones are exactly what they sound like. Leftover bones from last night's roast, scraped, seasoned, and grilled. It's Depression-era food for rich people who want to feel rustic. Toast racks hold triangles of bread, some white, some brown, all cut with geometric precision. Butter sits in a crystal dish, already softening in the warm room. Marmalade, strawberry jam, and honey are arranged in tiny pots with tiny spoons, because God forbid you use the same spoon for jam and marmalade. That's chaos. That's anarchy. There's porridge in a tureen for those who enjoy eating wallpaper paste. Cold ham, cold chicken, and cold tongue are sliced thin and arranged on platters. Pastries, croissants, scones, muffins are piled in baskets. Fresh fruit sits in bowls, pristine and polished, though no one ever actually eats it because fruit is somehow both too healthy and too messy for proper society. And tea, endless tea, or coffee if you're feeling continental. The teapot is silver, the cups are porcelain, and the milk comes in a little jug because pouring it straight from the bottle is barbaric. You sit down, and a footman immediately unfolds your napkin and places it on your lap because you've apparently forgotten how laps work. Another footman pours tea, a third offers toast. It's like being in a very slow, very polite circus. The meal itself is consumed in near silence. Newspapers are read, letters are opened, and conversations are limited to scheduling and complaints. Will you be in for luncheon? The Ashworths are hosting on Saturday. The gardener has done something appalling with the roses. No one discusses emotions, politics, or anything remotely interesting. That would be inappropriate before noon. Breakfast lasts at least an hour, sometimes 2 if there are guests. You eat slowly, chew properly, and try to ignore the fact that your corset is already digging into your ribs, and you've only consumed eggs and toast. There are still 9 more courses to get through, and it's barely 9 in the morning. When you finally finish, you dab your mouth with the napkin, place it beside your plate, and rise. The footmen don't move until you've left the room. Then they descend on the table like well-dressed locusts, clearing plates, scraping leftovers, and resetting everything for the next meal. The leftover food doesn't go to waste, of course. Some of it goes to the servants' hall where the staff eats in shifts, ranked by hierarchy. The rest is given to the poor, though you'll never see that happen because charity must remain abstract. You've done your part by overeating. Someone else handles the details. And now, stuffed and slightly nauseous, you head to the morning room to do absolutely nothing for the next 3 hours. Because that's what being rich is all about, eating too much and moving too little. After breakfast, you retire to the morning room, a space specifically designed for doing absolutely nothing of importance. Ladies write letters, arrange flowers, or stare wistfully out windows. Gentlemen read newspapers, smoke cigars, and discuss politics they'll never be affected by. The morning room is the most pointless room in a house full of pointless rooms. It's not the drawing room, which is for evening entertainment. It's not the library, which is for books no one reads. It's not the parlour, which is for receiving guests you don't particularly like. The morning room exists purely for the purpose of existing, a physical manifestation of having too much space and too little to do. The furniture is tasteful, upholstered chairs, a small writing desk, a settee positioned near the window for maximum natural light and minimum productivity. Fresh flowers are arranged in vases because you have a full-time gardener and nothing says I'm rich like killing flowers indoors. Watercolours hang on the walls, pleasant, inoffensive landscapes painted by women with too much time and too little training. If you're a woman, you sit at the writing desk and compose letters. Not interesting letters, mind you. Letters about thank yous, invitations, acceptances, and polite refusals. Dear Lady Pemberton, thank you so much for the delightful evening. The fish was exquisite. Yours sincerely. You write these letters on monogrammed stationery with a fountain pen that costs more than a housemaid's annual salary. Or perhaps you arrange flowers. There's a fresh delivery every morning from the greenhouse, and arranging them is considered a genteel activity for ladies. You snip stems, place roses, adjust lilies, and step back to admire your work as if you've just completed the Sistine Chapel. Meanwhile, the flowers slowly die in overheated rooms because no one thought to water them after you. Finished playing florist. If you're particularly bored, you embroider. Cushions, handkerchiefs, tablecloths, anything that can be stabbed repeatedly with a needle and thread. It's mindless, tedious, and utterly pointless, but it keeps your hands busy and prevents you from doing anything actually interesting, like reading a book about science or questioning the social order. The men, meanwhile, have retreated to their own version of the morning room, which is usually the library or the smoking room. They read the Times cover to cover, discussing political developments with the confidence of people who will never be personally affected by policy. Dreadful business in the Balkans. The Labour Party is getting too bold. Mark my words, this suffragette nonsense will blow over. They smoke cigars, drink sherry before noon, and complain about taxes while sitting in a house that costs more to heat than most people earn in a year. Some write letters to their club, their solicitor, or their estate manager, who does all the actual work of managing the country properties they own but never visit. Others read books, history, biography, philosophy, though they mostly skim and then claim to have read them thoroughly at dinner parties. Reading is more about appearing educated than actually learning anything. God forbid you have an original thought before luncheon. The morning room is a holding pen for the wealthy, a place to wait until the next meal, the next social event, the next excuse to put on different clothes and pretend life has meaning. It's where time goes to die slowly, surrounded by expensive furniture and people who have confused comfort with purpose. You glance at the clock. It's 10:30. Luncheon isn't until 1. You have 2.5 more hours to fill with letters, flowers, and the growing suspicion that being rich is actually incredibly boring. So you stare out the window at the gardens, watching the gardeners work and wonder what it's like to have a job that actually produces something. Then you remember you're not supposed to think thoughts like that, so you pick up your embroidery and stab the fabric until it's time to eat again. Let's address the elephant in the porcelain tub: bathing. The Edwardians had plumbing, but that didn't mean they used it. Many wealthy families believed bathing too frequently was unhealthy, so they'd go days, sometimes weeks, between proper washes. Instead, they relied on perfume, powder, and prayer. The logic, if you can call it that, was rooted in outdated medical theory. Doctors warned that bathing opened the pores, making you vulnerable to disease, bad air, and moral corruption. Too much water weakened the constitution, they said. It made you soft, effeminate, and prone to hysteria. Better to stay dirty and strong than clean and frail. So the wealthy bathed infrequently. Once a week was considered more than sufficient, and even that was viewed as somewhat excessive by older generations who remembered when bathing once a month was the norm. Queen Victoria herself reportedly bathed only occasionally, preferring sponge baths and liberal applications of rosewater. When you did bathe, it was an event. Servants carried buckets of hot water from the kitchen up multiple flights of stairs to your bedroom or dressing room, where a large copper or porcelain tub had been set up. It took dozens of trips to fill the tub, and by the time it was full, the water was already cooling. No instant hot water here, just back-breaking labour and lukewarm disappointment. You'd soak for maybe 15 minutes while your lady's maid or valet hovered nearby with towels, soap and a sponge. Privacy wasn't really a thing. Servants saw you naked regularly, and everyone just pretended it wasn't awkward. The soap was harsh, made from lye and animal fat, and it didn't lather well. You scrubbed, rinsed, and emerged smelling slightly less offensive but not exactly fresh. Then came the powder. Oh, the powder. To mask body odour and absorb sweat, wealthy Edwardians dusted themselves with scented talcum powder. It clung to skin, stained clothing, and created small clouds whenever you moved. Combined with perfume, heavy, floral, and applied with a generous hand, it created a scent profile best described as flowers dying in a gymnasium. Hair washing was even rarer. Women might wash their hair once a month, if that. The process involved lying back over a basin while a maid poured water and worked in soap made from eggs, borax, or other dubious ingredients. Rinsing took forever, drying took hours, and the whole ordeal was so exhausting that most women simply didn't bother. Instead, they brushed their hair daily to distribute the natural oils and used dry shampoos made from powder and orris root. Men had it slightly easier, but not much. They might wash their faces and hands daily, but full-body baths were still infrequent. Beards and moustaches were popular partly because they hid dirt and partly because shaving every day with a straight razor was dangerous when done by someone who hadn't slept enough or had already started drinking. The result? Everyone smelled. Rich, poor, royal, common. It didn't matter. Body odour was the great equaliser. The wealthy just masked it better with perfume, clean linen, and the confidence of people who assumed their sweat smelled better than yours. Some houses had newfangled bathrooms with plumbing, hot water heaters, and flushing toilets. But even then, many people didn't trust them. The toilets were too loud, the pipes made strange noises, and there was something deeply unsettling about having a dedicated room for bodily functions. It seemed almost improper. So instead, chamber pots remained in use. Discreet, portable, and emptied by servants who had long since stopped being surprised by anything the upper classes did. The pots were hidden in bedside cabinets, or disguised as furniture, and no one ever spoke of them. They simply existed, like so many uncomfortable truths in Edwardian England. Dental hygiene was equally haphazard. Toothbrushes existed, but many people still clean their teeth with cloth, salt, or nothing at all. Tooth powder was available, made from chalk, charcoal, or crushed bones, and it tasted exactly as horrifying as it sounds. Bad breath was universal, which is probably why everyone stood at arm's length during conversations. The irony, of course, is that the Edwardians were obsessed with appearances. Every outfit was perfect, every hair in place, every gesture calculated. But underneath the silk and lace, the starched collars and polished shoes, everyone was marinating in their own filth. And somehow, they convinced themselves this was civilization. Just when you thought you'd recovered from breakfast, it's time for luncheon. Another multi-course affair, lighter than breakfast but still elaborate enough to require 3 forks. Cold meats, salads, soups, savouries, and always tea. Luncheon is served at 1 o'clock sharp. Being late is unforgivable unless you're royalty, in which case it's fashionable. You enter the dining room to find the table set once again with china, crystal, and enough silverware to stock a small shop. The footmen are back, standing at attention, ready to serve. The first course is soup, something light and elegant, like consommé or cream of asparagus. It's served in delicate bowls with matching sauces, and you eat it with a specific spoon that's slightly larger than a teaspoon but smaller than a dessert spoon. Using the wrong spoon is a social crime punishable by gossip. Next comes fish. Poached salmon, grilled sole, or perhaps potted shrimp served with thin slices of brown bread and butter. Fish is considered appropriately light for luncheon, unlike the heavier meats reserved for dinner. You use the fish knife and fish fork, which are shaped differently from regular cutlery, because Edwardians love unnecessary complications. Then the main course, cold meats, sliced roast beef, chicken, ham, or tongue, arranged on platters with garnishes of lettuce, tomato, and cucumber. There are pickles, chutneys, and mustards in little pots. Fresh bread rolls sit in baskets lined with linen napkins. You help yourself, or rather, a footman helps you because self-service is for picnics and the working class. Salads appear, not just lettuce, but elaborate constructions of vegetables, mayonnaise, and aspic. Aspic is gelatin made from meat stock, and the Edwardians are obsessed with it. Everything gets suspended in aspic. Eggs, vegetables, fish, even fruit. It jiggles, it glistens, and it tastes like disappointment. There are savouries, cheese straws, devilled eggs, smoked oysters on toast. These are meant to cleanse the palate, though mostly they just add more food to an already overwhelming meal. You nibble politely, trying to pace yourself because there's still dessert to come. Dessert at luncheon is lighter than dinner. Fruit tarts, lemon posset, strawberries with cream, or perhaps a delicate sponge cake. It's sweet but not too sweet, indulgent but not excessively so. You eat it with yet another specialised fork and feel your corset tighten with every bite. Finally tea, because no meal is complete without tea. It's served in cups so thin you can see light through them, and the saucers are decorated with hand-painted flowers. The tea itself is strong, black, and served with milk and sugar. Biscuits accompany it, shortbread, ginger snaps, or wafers, because apparently you haven't eaten enough. Conversation during luncheon is more relaxed than dinner, but still carefully modulated. Topics include the weather, upcoming social events, and mutual acquaintances. You don't discuss politics, religion, money, or anything remotely controversial. That would be vulgar. Lovely weather we're having. Yes, though I hear rain is expected tomorrow. The Cavendishes are hosting on Thursday. How delightful. Will the Duchess attend? It's small talk elevated to an art form. Meaningless, polite, and utterly exhausting. If there are guests, you must be charming but not too charming, interested but not too interested. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny, compliment food you barely taste, and pretend you're having a wonderful time even though you'd rather be literally anywhere else. Luncheon lasts about 90 minutes, sometimes longer if there are many guests or someone decides to tell a particularly boring story about their travels. When it finally ends, you retire once again to the drawing room or morning room for coffee and more pointless conversation. The men might excuse themselves to smoke, the women to freshen up, which is code for adjusting corsets, reapplying powder, and complaining quietly about their husbands. Then everyone reconvenes for the afternoon's activities, calls, correspondence, or more sitting around pretending to be busy. And through it all, you're aware that in just a few hours it will be time for tea, and after tea, dinner, and after dinner, a late supper. The Edwardian wealthy don't just eat, they eat constantly, elaborately, and with a level of ceremony that turns basic nutrition into performance art. You loosen your belt discreetly, hoping no one notices, and wonder how people survived before antacids were invented. Afternoons are reserved for visiting other wealthy people and judging their homes. You dress in your finest day clothes, bring calling cards, and engage in polite conversation that's really just competitive gossip disguised as concern. Afternoon calls are not casual drop-ins. They're carefully orchestrated social rituals with rules so complex they'd make a chess grandmaster weep. First, there's timing. Calls are made between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, never earlier, never later. Arriving at 2:59 makes you desperate. Arriving at 5:01 makes you rude. You don't call on just anyone. There's a hierarchy. You call on people of equal or higher social rank, never lower. You call on new neighbours, recent brides, and anyone who has recently experienced a major life event. You call on people you want to impress, people you need to maintain relationships with, and people you secretly despise but must pretend to like for social reasons. Your lady's maid helps you change into afternoon dress, something less formal than evening wear but more elaborate than morning attire. The dress is usually silk or fine wool, carefully tailored with matching accessories. You wear gloves naturally, and a hat because leaving the house bareheaded is scandalous. Your hat is secured with pins long enough to double as weapons, and it's festooned with feathers, flowers, or possibly a small bird. You carry calling cards, small rectangles of thick cardstock engraved with your name and title. These are essential. When you arrive at someone's house, you hand your cards to the butler, who presents them to the lady of the house on a silver tray. She then decides whether to receive you or claim she's not at home, which is polite code for "I don't want to see you today." If she's not at home, you leave your cards and depart. If she receives you, you're ushered into the drawing room, where tea, small cakes, and small talk await. The drawing room is a stage, and you're both performer and critic. You assess everything: the furniture, the flowers, the quality of the tea service, the behaviour of the servants. Is the upholstery new or shabby? Are the flower arrangements fresh or wilting? Does the tea taste expensive, or did they cheap out on the blend? Meanwhile, your hostess is doing the same to you. She's noting your dress, your jewellery, your conversational skills. She's listening for gossip, gauging your social connections, and deciding whether maintaining a relationship with you is worth the effort. The conversation is a minefield. You must be interesting but not scandalous, informed but not opinionated, warm but not too familiar. You discuss mutual friends. Have you seen Lady Harrington lately? I hear the Pembrokes are summering in Scotland. Poor Mrs. Whitmore. Her daughter's engagement was called off, so tragic. You don't actually care about any of these people, but pretending to care is the glue that holds Edwardian society together. Calls last exactly 15 minutes. Not 14, not 16, 15. Staying too short is insulting. Staying too long is presumptuous. You must watch the clock discreetly, finish your tea at the 13-minute mark, make your excuses, and depart gracefully by minute 15. It's been absolutely lovely, but I really must be going. Of course, thank you so much for calling. Do give my regards to Lord Ashworth. I certainly will. Do come again soon. No one means any of it. You collect your gloves, your parasol and your dignity, then climb back into your carriage to repeat the process at the next house. On a busy afternoon, you might make 4 or 5 calls, each one a carefully choreographed performance of politeness and pretense. And if you're the one receiving calls, you spend the entire afternoon sitting in the drawing room, waiting for the butler to announce visitors. You smile, you pour tea, you make conversation, and you silently judge everyone who walks through your door. Are they wearing last season's fashions? Did they arrive in a hired carriage? Did they commit any social faux pas that you can gossip about later? When the calls finally end, you're exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the sheer mental effort of being polite to people you barely tolerate. You collapse onto the nearest settee and pray you have at least an hour before you need to change clothes again for tea. Because yes, tea is next. And after tea, dinner. And after dinner, perhaps an evening event, a concert, a ball, or another round of forced socialising. Being wealthy in Edwardian England isn't restful. It's a full-time job with no salary, no vacation, and a performance. Review conducted by every gossipy matron in London. At 4 o'clock sharp, tea is served. Not just tea, sandwiches, scones, cakes, pastries, and enough sugar to put an entire village into a coma. This isn't a snack, it's a performance, and you're the lead actor. Tea time is sacred in Edwardian England. It's the moment when the entire household pauses, gathers, and engages in the ritual consumption of baked goods and hot beverages. Whether you're at home or visiting, whether you're hosting or guesting, tea is non-negotiable. Skipping tea is like skipping church, technically possible but socially disastrous. The tea itself is served from a silver teapot so polished you can see your reflection. The tea is strong, black, and brewed to perfection by someone who's been making tea since before you were born. You pour it into delicate china cups, never mugs, never anything utilitarian, and add milk and sugar according to personal preference. The milk goes in first if you're traditional, after if you're modern and slightly rebellious. But tea is just the opening act. The real star of the show is the food. Oh, the food. First, sandwiches. But not just any sandwiches, these are finger sandwiches. Tiny triangles of crustless white bread filled with cucumber, smoked salmon, egg and cress, or potted meat. They're so small you could eat 6 without realizing it, and you probably will because they're designed to be insubstantial. Each one is 1 bite, maybe 2, and they're arranged on tiered silver stands like edible architecture. Then come the scones, fresh, warm and fluffy. They're served with clotted cream and jam. The great debate, cream first or jam first? It depends on whether you're from Devon or Cornwall, and people have opinions about this that border on religious fervour. You spread generously, take a bite, and pretend you're not getting crumbs all over your silk dress. Next, the cakes. Oh, the cakes. Victoria sponge, lemon drizzle, Battenberg, fruit cake, seed cake, arranged on cake stands like a baker's fever dream. Each slice is cut precisely, served on small plates, eaten with even smaller forks. The cakes are rich, buttery, and completely unnecessary after sandwiches and scones, but that's never stopped anyone. There are pastries too. Eclairs, cream puffs, fruit tarts, macarons before macarons were trendy. Everything is bite-sized, elegant, and designed to make you feel both sophisticated and slightly sick. If you're hosting, tea is your chance to show off. The quality of your tea service, the freshness of your cakes, the skill of your cook, all of it is being judged. Your guests will smile and compliment you to your face, then whisper to their friends later. The sandwiches were dry. The scones were dense. I think the cake was from yesterday. Hosting tea is like hosting a competitive baking show, where everyone's a critic and no one's kind. If you're a guest, you must navigate tea with grace. Take one sandwich, one scone, one slice of cake. Don't overload your plate like you're at a buffet. Eat delicately, chew quietly, and whatever you do, don't drop crumbs. Dropping crumbs suggests you're eating too enthusiastically, which suggests you're either poor or uncivilized. Conversation during tea is lighter than luncheon. You discuss fashion, recent social events, the theatre, books, though not controversial books, only pleasant ones. You laugh at gentle jokes, share harmless gossip, and avoid topics like politics, money, or anything remotely serious. The new play at the Savoy is absolutely delightful. Yes, I've heard marvellous things. And did you hear about Lady Pemberton's hat at the garden party? Apparently the feathers came from South America. How exotic. It's all surface, all performance. No one talks about feelings, fears, or anything real. Tea is an escape from reality, a brief interlude of sugar and civility before the evening's obligations begin. And tea isn't just for women, though they dominate the ritual. Men join if they're home, sipping tea while reading newspapers or discussing business in hushed tones. Children are sometimes allowed to join for tea, though they're expected to sit quietly, eat neatly, and not speak unless spoken to. Tea is training for adulthood, learning to be polite, restrained, and slightly uncomfortable. When tea ends, the servants clear the tables, wash the dishes, and reset everything for tomorrow. Because tomorrow at 4 o'clock sharp it will all happen again. Same tea, same cakes, same performance, and you'll be there, cup in hand, smile fixed, pretending that eating tiny sandwiches with rich people you barely like is the height of civilization. Your closet isn't a closet, it's a room. Actually, several rooms. One for day dresses, one for evening gowns, one for sporting clothes you'll never actually wear while sporting. You own dozens of hats, gloves, parasols and shoes you'll wear exactly once before they're out of fashion. Let's start with the day dresses. You own at least 20, possibly more. There are morning dresses for wearing around the house, walking dresses for strolling in the park, visiting dresses for making afternoon calls, and tea gowns for, well, tea. Each one is made from different fabric, silk, wool, cotton, linen, depending on the season, occasion, and time of day. The morning dresses are relatively simple. High necks, long sleeves, modest embellishments. You wear these for breakfast and puttering around the house, though simple still means boned bodices, structured skirts, and enough buttons to require assistance. Walking dresses are sturdier, designed to withstand outdoor wear. They have shorter hemlines, ankle length instead of floor length, and practical fabrics that won't show dirt. Visiting dresses are more elaborate, silk, lace trim, embroidery. You want to look impressive but not overdressed, fashionable but not frivolous. Tea gowns are a category unto themselves. These are looser, more comfortable dresses worn, at home in the late afternoon. They're less structured than day dresses, no corset required, though you probably still wear one out of habit. Tea gowns are elegant but relaxed, the Edwardian equivalent of loungewear. They're not meant to be seen in public, only by family and very close friends. Then there are evening gowns. These are the showstoppers. Low necklines, bare shoulders, elaborate embroidery, beading, lace and silk. You own at least a dozen, each one more extravagant than the last. Some are in pastels for spring and summer, others in rich jewel tones for autumn and winter. Each gown is worn once, maybe twice, before it's considered seen and must be retired or altered. And don't forget the sporting clothes. Riding habits for horseback riding, though you rarely ride. Tennis dresses for tennis, though you mostly watch. Bathing costumes for the seaside, consisting of so much fabric you could drown just from the weight. These clothes hang in your wardrobe pristine and barely worn, because sporting activities are less about sport and more about being seen in the right outfit. Hats. Oh, the hats. You own dozens. Big hats, small hats, feathered hats, flowered hats, hats with veils, hats with ribbons. Each outfit requires a specific hat, and wearing the wrong one is a fashion disaster. Your hat collection takes up an entire room, each one stored in its own box, labelled and rotated seasonally. Gloves are equally excessive. Long evening gloves in white kid skin, short day gloves in leather or cotton, lace gloves for summer, fur-lined gloves for winter. You go through gloves quickly because they stain easily and can't be washed without ruining them. A single season might require 20 pairs. Shoes are stored in rows, boots for walking, slippers for evening, day shoes for general wear. They're all narrow, pointed and uncomfortable. Wealthy Edwardian women often have foot problems by their 30s because fashion prioritises appearance over anatomy. Parasols, fans, shawls, stoles, belts, brooches, necklaces, bracelets, all carefully organised in drawers, cabinets and jewellery boxes. Each accessory has its place, and your lady's maid knows exactly where everything is because you certainly don't. Getting dressed each day is like curating a museum exhibition. Your maid selects the appropriate outfit based on the day's schedule, the weather, and current fashion. She lays everything out: dress, undergarments, shoes, gloves, hat, jewellery. You stand still while she dresses you, layer by layer, accessory by accessory. And the cost? Astronomical. A single evening gown can cost the equivalent of a housemaid's yearly salary. Your wardrobe represents a fortune. Tens of thousands of pounds tied up in fabric, lace, and the labour of seamstresses who work by candlelight. But fashion is currency in Edwardian society. Your clothes signal your wealth, your status, your taste. Being poorly dressed is worse than being poor. It suggests you don't care, or worse, that you can't afford to care. So you buy, you wear, you discard, and you buy again, trapped in a cycle of consumption that defines your worth by what hangs in your closet. And somewhere, deep in the back of your wardrobe, is a dress you wore once to a garden party 3 years ago. It's still beautiful, still perfectly good. But you'll never wear it again because someone might remember. And being memorable for the wrong reasons is the ultimate Edwardian sin. You don't just own one house, you own several. There's the London townhouse, the country estate, the hunting lodge, and probably a cottage somewhere you've forgotten about. The country estate is massive, staffed year-round, and you visit it maybe twice a year for weekend parties. The country estate sits on hundreds, sometimes thousands of acres. Rolling hills, forests, farmland, and tenant cottages dot the landscape like pieces on a board game you inherited but never learned to play. The house itself is enormous, 50, 60, maybe 70 rooms spread across multiple wings, some of which haven't been opened in decades because there's simply no point. There's a grand entrance hall with marble floors and a double staircase that exists purely for dramatic entrances. The drawing room could host a small wedding. The dining room seats 40 people comfortably. There's a ballroom with chandeliers so large they require pulleys to lower them for cleaning. A library filled with leather-bound books no one reads. A billiard room. A music room with a grand piano that's tuned quarterly whether anyone plays it or not. And that's just the main house. There's also the stable block, which houses horses you rarely ride and carriages you barely use. The orangery, where exotic plants grow in heated glass rooms. The ice house, dug deep into the ground to store ice cut from the lake in winter. The game larder, where pheasants and deer hang after shooting parties. The brew house, the laundry house, the dairy, all separate buildings, all fully staffed. Speaking of staff, the country estate employs dozens of people year-round. Even when you're not there, which is most of the time, the household runs like clockwork. There's a house steward who manages everything, a land agent who oversees the farms and tenants, gamekeepers who protect the hunting grounds, gardeners who maintain the formal gardens, and indoor servants who dust, clean and polish rooms that won't see human occupation for months. Why maintain all this for a house you barely visit? Because closing it down would be admitting you can't afford it. And even if you secretly can't afford it, many aristocrats are land rich and cash poor by this era. You must maintain appearances. The estate represents your family's legacy, your position in society, your connection to the land and the people who work it. When you do visit, it's usually for a house party. You invite 20 or 30 guests for a long weekend of hunting, shooting, cards, and elaborate meals. The servants spring into action, airing out bedrooms, preparing guest rooms, stocking the kitchens with enough food to feed an army. Your guests arrive with their own servants, ladies' maids, valets, sometimes even their own footmen, who must be housed, fed, and managed alongside your permanent staff. The weekend follows a rigid schedule. Breakfast at 9, shooting from 10 until luncheon, tea at 4, dressing for dinner at 7, dinner at 8, cards and conversation until midnight. Your guests rotate through activities like they're on a luxury cruise, except the ship is stationary and made of stone. You wander through rooms you haven't seen in months, vaguely recognizing furniture and portraits. Is that new, you ask, pointing to a painting? No, ma'am, your housekeeper replies patiently. That's been there since your father's time. You nod, pretending you knew, and move on. The estate also generates income, theoretically. Tenant farmers pay rent to work your land. They grow crops, raise animals, and give you a portion of their earnings. Your land agent handles all of this, collecting rents, managing disputes, making improvements. You sign papers occasionally, but mostly remain blissfully ignorant of how any of it actually works. Some aristocrats take their estates seriously, modernizing farms, improving cottages, investing in new agricultural techniques. Others treat them like money printing machines, extracting rent while contributing nothing back. Either way, the estate is both an asset and a burden, a source of pride and a constant drain on resources. When the weekend party ends, you return to London, leaving the estate behind once again. The servants close up the guest rooms, the gardeners resume their quiet work, and the house settles back into its usual state, beautifully maintained, meticulously managed, and almost entirely empty. And somewhere in the estate office, your land agent looks at the accounts and quietly worries about how much longer this can continue. But that's not your problem. That's what land agents are for. Edwardian dinner parties are not casual affairs. They're military operations, 7 to 12 courses, specific seating arrangements, rigid etiquette, and conversation topics so bland they could cure insomnia. You'll spend 4 hours at the table, and you're not allowed to leave until the hostess does. Dinner begins at 8 o'clock, sometimes 8:30, if the host wants to appear fashionably continental. But you don't simply walk into the dining room, that would be chaos. Instead, guests gather in the drawing room for pre-dinner drinks, where the butler discreetly informs everyone of the seating arrangement. This has been planned for days, possibly weeks, based on rank, title, and social precedent. The highest-ranking male guest escorts the hostess into dinner. The host escorts the highest-ranking female guest. Everyone else pairs off according to a complex hierarchy that makes royal succession look simple. You take the arm of whoever you've been assigned, walk in procession to the dining room, and pray you haven't been seated next to someone catastrophically boring. The dining table is a masterpiece of excess. White linen tablecloth, polished silver candelabras, crystal glasses arranged in ascending order of size, and place settings that require a manual to navigate. Each guest has multiple forks, knives, and spoons, sometimes 8 or 9 pieces of cutlery. Working from the outside in is the rule, but even that gets confusing when you're on course 5 and you've lost track of which fork you just used. The centerpiece is usually flowers, elaborate arrangements of roses, lilies, or orchids, carefully chosen to be beautiful but not so tall they block conversation. Though honestly, blocking conversation might be a mercy. The first course is soup, served by footmen in pristine white gloves. They move silently around the table, ladling from silver tureens. The soup is consumed in near silence because talking with your mouth full is vulgar, and the soup is very hot, so you're mostly just blowing on it gently and hoping you don't slurp. Course 2. Fish, poached, grilled, or in aspic. You use the fish knife and fish fork, carefully separating flesh from bone while maintaining perfect posture. The footmen refill your wine glass, white wine for fish, naturally. You take a sip, nod approvingly, and try to think of something to say to the person beside you. Course 3. An entree, which confusingly isn't the main course, but rather a small dish of chicken, sweetbreads, or vol au vents. It's meant to bridge the gap between fish and meat, because apparently eating fish and then meat without a palate. Cleansing intermediate dish is barbaric. Course 4. The sorbet. A small dish of lemon or champagne ice, served specifically to cleanse your palate before the main event. You eat it in 3 bites, dab your mouth with your napkin, and brace yourself. Course 5. The roast. This is the centerpiece. Beef, lamb, game birds, or venison, depending on the season and the host's ambition. It's carved at the table or brought in already sliced, surrounded by roasted vegetables and accompanied by rich sauces. Red wine is poured. You cut your meat into small manageable pieces and chew slowly, because eating quickly suggests you're either starving or common. Conversation during the meal is carefully regulated. You speak to the person on your right for the first half of dinner, then turn and speak to the person on your left for the second half. This turning is signalled by the hostess and must be obeyed. You can't just keep talking to someone you actually like. That would disrupt the system. Topics are safe and dull. The weather, upcoming social events, travel, gardens, horses, never politics, religion, money, illness, or anything remotely personal. The goal is to be pleasant, neutral, and forgettable. Lovely weather we've been having. Yes, though I hear rain is forecast. Such a pity. I do hope it clears for the Ashworth's garden party. Indeed. Have you seen their new rose garden? Not yet, though I've heard it's spectacular. This goes on for hours. Course 6. Game, if the roast wasn't already game. Pheasant, partridge, or quail served with game chips and bread sauce. More wine, more polite chewing, more desperately bland conversation. Course 7. Vegetables or salad, served separately because combining them with the meat would be gauche. The salad is often just lettuce with a simple dressing, but it's presented like it's a culinary revelation. Course 8. Sweet. Puddings, trifles, jellies, ice creams, or elaborate desserts involving spun sugar and architectural ambition. You're so full by now that the sight of food makes you slightly nauseous, but you take a portion anyway because refusing dessert suggests you're either ill or rude. Course 9. Savoury, because apparently dessert isn't enough. This might be cheese, devils on horseback, prunes wrapped in bacon, or anchovy toast. It's meant to cleanse the palate after all that sweetness, though at this point your palate has given up entirely. Course 10. Fruit and nuts, served with little silver picks and tiny forks. Grapes, oranges, figs, walnuts, almonds, all arranged artistically on tiered stands. You nibble delicately, wondering if you'll ever feel hungry again. Finally the ladies withdraw. The hostess catches the eye of the ranking female guest, stands, and sweeps out of the room. All the women follow, leaving the men to their port, cigars, and conversations about politics and hunting. The women retire to the drawing room for coffee, gossip, and passive-aggressive compliments. Your gown is so charming, such an interesting colour choice. Translation: it's hideous. You must give me the name of your dressmaker. Translation: so I know who to avoid. The men rejoin the ladies after 30 minutes or so, and everyone stands round making small talk until it's finally blessedly acceptable to leave. You say your goodbyes, collect your wrap, and escape into the night, swearing you'll never eat again. Until tomorrow's dinner party, that is. After dinner, men retreat to the smoking room while women retire to the drawing room. The smoking room is filled with leather chairs, brandy cigars, and deeply boring conversations about investments and hunting. The smoking room is a men-only sanctuary, a place where they can loosen their collars, sprawl in chairs, and finally stop pretending to care about propriety. It's usually located on the ground floor, deliberately far from the drawing room so the ladies won't be offended by the smell of tobacco and testosterone. The decor is aggressively masculine. Dark wood panelling, leather armchairs worn smooth by decades of wealthy bottoms, oil paintings of dead animals and stern ancestors, and hunting trophies mounted on walls. There's a stag's head above the fireplace, possibly a fox, maybe a few, pheasants under glass. The message is clear. This is a room for men who do manly things like killing animals and discussing the stock market. The furniture is arranged in small clusters, chairs grouped around low tables, encouraging conversation, but also allowing for private discussions. Ashtrays are everywhere. Heavy crystal things the size of dinner plates. The lighting is low, provided by gas lamps or electric lights fitted with amber shades that cast everything in a warm, conspiratorial glow. As soon as the men enter, jackets are unbuttoned, postures relax, and cigars are selected from a humidor the size of a small coffin. Choosing a cigar is a ritual in itself. The host offers the box, and each man selects one, rolling it between his fingers, sniffing it, checking the wrapper for imperfections. Cuban cigars are preferred, of course, because anything less would be admitting you're poor. Cigars are clipped, lit with wooden matches or tapers from the fireplace, and puffed until the room fills with thick aromatic smoke. The smell is overpowering, rich, earthy, and slightly sweet. It clings to clothes, hair, moustaches. By the time the men rejoin the ladies, they'll smell like a tobacco factory caught fire, but that's considered perfectly acceptable. Brandy is poured, cognac preferably aged from crystal decanters that have been in the family for generations. The glasses are balloon-shaped snifters, designed to be cradled in the palm to warm the liquor. Each man swirls his brandy, inhales the aroma, and takes a sip like he's performing for an invisible audience. And then the conversation begins. Or rather, the monologues begin, because smoking room talk is less about dialogue and more about men taking turns talking while others pretend to listen. Politics is a favourite topic. The men discuss parliament, elections, policy changes, and the general decline of everything. The Labour Party's getting too bold. These suffragettes are becoming a menace. Mark my words, giving the working class too much power will end badly. They speak with the confidence of people who will never personally suffer the consequences of bad policy. Hunting stories are another staple. Every man has a tale about the stag that got away, the perfect shot, the treacherous weather, the incompetent gamekeeper. These stories are told and retold, embellished with each retelling until they bear no resemblance to reality. No one calls anyone out because everyone's lying. I once shot a 12-point stag in Scotland. Magnificent beast. Took him down with one shot at 200 yards. Really? I heard it was more like 50 yards and the gamekeeper practically handed you the rifle. Well, memory's a funny thing, isn't it? Investments and business are discussed, though carefully. Talking too openly about money is vulgar, so everything is couched in euphemisms. Diversifying holdings, exploring opportunities, consulting with my man of business. No one admits they're struggling, even if their estates are mortgaged to the hilt and their London houses are falling apart. Horse racing, club gossip and military campaigns also make appearances. The men rehash old wars, speculate about future ones, and critique generals they've never met. It's armchair warfare conducted by people who've never held a rifle in anger. Younger men sit quietly, listening to their elders, laughing at jokes that aren't funny, and nodding along to opinions they may or may not share. Speaking out of turn is a quick way to be labelled impertinent. Better to stay silent, puff your cigar, and wait your turn. The room grows warmer as the fire burns and the cigars smoulder. Jackets come off entirely. Waistcoats are unbuttoned, ties are loosened. The brandy flows, voices grow louder, and stories become more exaggerated. After 30 or 40 minutes, the host stands, signalling that it's time to rejoin the ladies. The men stub out their cigars, drain their glasses, and reluctantly rebutton their jackets. They straighten ties, smooth hair, and mentally prepare to be polite again. As they file out of the smoking room, the smell follows them like a cloud. The ladies will wrinkle their noses but say nothing, because commenting on the smell would be admitting they noticed, which would be acknowledging the smoking room exists, which would be acknowledging that men have private spaces where women aren't welcome. And that, in Edwardian England, is simply not discussed. Meanwhile, in the drawing room, women are expected to entertain themselves with music, needlework, or polite gossip. It's less fun than it sounds. Actually, it's not fun at all. When the ladies withdraw from the dining room, they're ushered into the drawing room by the hostess, a space designed to be elegant, comfortable, and utterly stifling. The furniture is upholstered in silk or damask, arranged in conversational clusters. There are settees, armchairs, occasional tables, and enough decorative pillows to suffocate someone if the boredom doesn't kill them first. The lighting is softer than in the dining room, lamps with fabric shades, candles in sconces, maybe a fire crackling in the marble fireplace. It's meant to be flattering, making everyone look younger and prettier, though mostly it just makes everyone look tired. Coffee is served immediately, not the robust stuff the men drink, but delicate demi-tasse cups of sweet milky coffee accompanied by petit fours, chocolates, and sugared almonds. The ladies accept their cups, perch on the edges of chairs because corsets make actual sitting impossible, and wait for someone to start a conversation. The hostess usually takes the lead. Lady Pemberton, I've been meaning to ask, how is your daughter enjoying her season? And just like that, the evening's entertainment begins. Polite conversation that's really competitive gossip disguised as concern. Oh, she's having a lovely time, though the schedule is quite exhausting. Yes, the season can be so demanding. Has she received any particular attentions? Translation. Is anyone actually interested in marrying her, or is she going to end up a spinster? The conversation flows from topic to topic. Upcoming social events, recent engagements, fashion, travel plans. But beneath the surface, it's all strategy and judgment. Who's marrying whom? Who's running out of money? Who wore the same dress twice? Who's too thin? Too fat? Too loud? Too quiet? I saw Mrs. Harrington at the opera last week. She looked rather pale. Well, I've heard she's been unwell. Unwell? Or expecting? A meaningful pause. Eyebrows raise. Everyone takes a sip of coffee and pretends they're not wildly speculating about someone's private life. If there's a piano, someone will be asked to play. This is not optional. Young ladies are expected to have musical accomplishments, and displaying them is part of the social contract. The hostess will say, "Miss Thompson, won't you play something for us?" And Miss Thompson, who's been dreading this moment all evening, will reluctantly sit at the piano and perform. She plays something safe, a Chopin nocturne, a Mozart sonata, something recognisable but not too showy. Playing too well suggests you practised excessively, which suggests you don't have better things to do, which suggests you're either unmarried or dull. Playing badly is worse. It suggests you're lazy or untalented. The key is to play competently, but not brilliantly, hitting that sweet spot of accomplished mediocrity. Everyone listens politely, applauds when it's over, and offers compliments that range from sincere to vaguely insulting. How lovely, dear. You play beautifully. Such a charming piece, though I do prefer the Beethoven you played last time. If there's no piano, the ladies might engage in needlework. Embroidery hoops come out, and fingers fly over fabric, creating patterns of flowers, birds, or monograms. It's mindless work, perfect for keeping hands busy while mouths gossip. Have you heard about the Cavendish scandal? No? Do tell. And someone does tell in hushed tones while needles pierce fabric and everyone leans in slightly, pretending they're not desperate for details. Sometimes the ladies look at photograph albums or stereoscope images, early 20th century entertainment that's about as thrilling as watching paint dry. They flip through pictures of other people's holidays, gardens, and distant relatives, making polite noises of interest while internally screaming. Conversation is carefully modulated to avoid anything controversial. Politics are off limits, that's for men. Religion is too divisive. Money is vulgar, so they stick to safe topics: weather, fashion, charity work, children. The weather's been so unpredictable lately. Yes, my roses are suffering terribly. Have you tried the new fertilizer method? And somehow this passes for scintillating conversation. Younger women sit quietly unless directly addressed. They're learning the art of ladylike conversation, which mostly involves listening, smiling, and contributing nothing of substance. Speaking too much marks you as forward. Speaking too little marks you as dull. It's a tightrope walk where the only winning move is to be present but forgettable. After 30 or 40 minutes, the sound of male voices and cigar smoke announces the men's return. The ladies straighten in their seats, refresh their smiles, and prepare for the final stretch of the evening. Mixed company conversation, which is somehow even more tedious than gender-segregated conversation. The men settle into chairs still smelling of brandy and tobacco. Someone suggests cards, someone else suggests music. The hostess orchestrates it all with the skill of a diplomat, ensuring everyone is engaged but no one is having too much fun. And the ladies, corseted and caffeinated, smile through it all, counting the minutes until they can finally, mercifully go home. Your house has a ballroom. A massive chandeliered, marble-floored ballroom. You use it maybe 3 times a year for parties that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. The ballroom is located on the first floor, accessed by a sweeping marble staircase designed for grand entrances. The room itself is enormous, 60 feet long, 40 feet wide, with ceilings soaring 20 feet above. Crystal chandeliers hang from ornate plaster mouldings, each one holding hundreds of candles, or, if you're very modern, electric bulbs that flicker like captive stars. The walls are covered in silk damask or hand-painted panels depicting pastoral scenes, classical mythology, or your family's dubious claims to historical importance. Gilded mirrors line the walls, multiplying the light from the chandeliers and making the room feel even larger. The floor is polished parquet or marble, buffed to such a shine you can see your reflection. At one end of the room is a musician's gallery, a raised platform where the orchestra sits during balls. The other end features tall French, doors that open onto a terrace overlooking the gardens. On warm summer nights, guests spill outside between dances, fanning themselves and gossiping under the stars. Building this ballroom cost a fortune. Architects were consulted, Italian craftsmen were imported, and months of construction disrupted the household. Your father or grandfather commissioned it during a period of optimism, or perhaps delusion, believing the family would host glittering balls every season. The reality? You use it 3, maybe 4 times a year. Once for a debutante ball if you have a daughter coming out. Once or twice for charity events that are really just excuses for the wealthy. to dress up and congratulate themselves. Maybe once for a particularly important house party. The rest of the time, it sits empty. Dust sheets cover the furniture pushed against the walls. The chandeliers are dark. The floor, despite being polished monthly by maids on their hands and knees, shows no footprints because no one walks on it. When you do host a ball, the preparation is enormous. A week beforehand, the household goes into crisis mode. Every surface is cleaned, polished, and inspected. The chandeliers are lowered on pulleys, each crystal prism wiped individually. The floor is waxed and buffed until it is dangerously slippery. Hothouse flowers are ordered, thousands of them, arranged in massive displays along the walls. Furniture is rearranged. Gilt chairs line the perimeter for those who need to sit between dances. Small tables are placed in alcoves for refreshments, and a supper room is prepared in an adjacent space, laden with food that would feed a village. The guest list is agonized over for weeks. Who to invite, who to exclude, where everyone should rank in the receiving line. Invitations are sent 6 weeks in advance on heavy card stock, engraved with your family crest. Replies are tracked meticulously. Acceptances are celebrated, refusals are analysed for hidden insults. On the night of the ballroom is transformed. Thousands of candles or electric lights blaze. The orchestra tunes their instruments. The air smells of flowers, beeswax and expensive perfume. Footmen in full livery stand at attention, ready to announce guests as they arrive. You stand at the entrance with your spouse greeting each guest personally. Handshakes, curtsies, polite murmurs. So glad you could come. Delighted to be here. You look lovely this evening. Over and over for 200 guests. The dancing begins with a waltz. Couples glide across the floor in coordinated patterns, women's gowns swirling, men's tailcoats swishing. The music swells, the chandeliers glitter, and for a moment it's almost magical. Almost. But then you notice the cracks. Lady Ashworth is dancing with someone who isn't her husband. Lord Pemberton is drinking too much champagne and getting loud. Your daughter missed a step and is mortified. The supper room is running low on lobster patties. Between dances, guests retreat to the edges of the room, fanning themselves and complaining. It's dreadfully hot in here. Yes, though opening the doors would create a draught. I do hope the supper is better than last year's. Polite smiles, casual cruelty. The ball lasts until 2 or 3 in the morning. By the end, you're exhausted, your feet are screaming, and you're wondering why you subjected yourself to this. The guests depart, full of compliments that may or may not be sincere. What a lovely evening. Simply divine. We must do that again soon. They won't mean it. The next morning, the ballroom is a disaster. Wilted flowers, overturned champagne glasses, scuff marks on the floor. The servants spend days cleaning, restoring it to its pristine, unused state, and then it sits empty again, waiting for the next ball, the next performance, the next brief moment when all that expense and effort might feel justified. But mostly it just waits, a monument to wealth, a shrine to excess, a beautiful, useless space that exists because you can afford to have beautiful, useless things. Because in Edwardian England, that's what wealth is for. Below stairs, there's an entire world you barely acknowledge. Butlers, housekeepers, footmen, maids, cooks, scullery maids, and hall boys, all with their own rankings, rivalries, and rules. They run your life, and you'll never know most of their names. The hierarchy below stairs is more rigid than the aristocracy above it. Everyone has a rank, and everyone knows exactly where they stand. Crossing those invisible lines is professional suicide. At the top sits the butler, the unquestioned king of the male servants. He manages the wine cellar, oversees the footman, serves at table, and runs the household with an iron fist wrapped in white gloves. He's addressed as Mr. by everyone, including the housekeeper. He earns the highest salary among servants, sometimes £50 to £80 a year, and enjoys privileges like his own sitting room and first choice of leftovers. The housekeeper is his female equivalent, ruling over the maids with absolute authority. She's called Mrs. even if she's unmarried. It's a title of respect, not marital status. She manages the linen, oversees cleaning, handles the household accounts, and hires and fires female staff. She has her own sitting room, takes tea separately from the lower servants, and is treated with a deference that borders on fear. The butler and housekeeper technically have equal power, but they operate in separate spheres. He manages the public-facing parts of the house and the male staff. She manages the private areas and the female staff. They meet daily to coordinate, but they're also rivals, each protecting their territory jealously. Below them are the upper servants, the ladies' maids and valets, who serve the family directly and consider themselves a cut above the rest. They dress well, often in hand-me-downs from their employers, eat at a separate table, and rarely socialise with lower servants. A lady's maid might earn £25 to £40 a year, plus tips and cast-off clothing that she can resell. Then come the footmen, chosen as much for height and appearance as for competence. They serve at table, answer the door, carry messages, and stand around looking decorative. They wear livery, elaborate uniforms in the family colours, and powder their hair if the household is particularly traditional. Young, handsome footmen are prized, and they know it. They can be arrogant, vain, and difficult. The cook reigns over the kitchen with the authority of a general commanding an army. She's usually called Mrs. as well, even if unmarried, and she tolerates no interference. The kitchen is her domain. She plans menus, manages kitchen maids, and produces the elaborate meals that define upper-class life. A good cook is worth her weight in gold and knows it. If she's unhappy, she'll leave, and replacing her is a nightmare. Below the cook are kitchen maids, scullery maids, and, lowliest of all, the scullery maid or skivvy. This poor girl, often just 13 or 14, works from 5 in the morning until 10 at night, scrubbing pots, washing dishes, and cleaning the kitchen. She earns maybe £8 to £12 a year, sleeps in a tiny attic room, and is treated like she's barely human. She's not allowed to speak unless spoken to, not allowed to make eye contact with upper servants, and definitely not allowed to dream of anything better. Housemaids are ranked too. The head housemaid oversees the others, assigning rooms and inspecting work. Under her, the upper housemaids who clean the main rooms, and the lower housemaids who handle the bedrooms, hallways, and back stairs. They rise before dawn to light fires, empty chamber pots, and make beds before the family wakes. The between maid or tweenie is stuck between roles, sometimes helping in the kitchen, sometimes cleaning upstairs. She's everyone's assistant and no one's priority, doing whatever. Job no one else wants. At the very bottom are hall boys and boot boys, young lads who carry coal, clean shoes, run errands, and dream of being promoted to footman someday. They're paid almost nothing, work brutal hours, and are routinely beaten or dismissed for minor infractions. The servants' hall, where most of them eat, has its own seating hierarchy. The butler and housekeeper sit at the head of the table. Upper servants sit nearest them. Lower servants cluster at the far end. Conversation is minimal. Eating is done quickly and efficiently. After the meal, the upper servants retire to the housekeeper's room or butler's pantry for tea and relative comfort. The lower servants stay in the hall or return to work. Romances between servants are forbidden but happen anyway. If a maid gets pregnant, she's dismissed immediately. If a footman is caught with a maid, he might be fired too, though. Men usually get off easier. Marriage means leaving service. Most households won't employ married, couples except in rare cases. Gossip flows freely below stairs. Servants know everything, which marriages are failing, who's having affairs, who's running out of money. They trade information like currency, building alliances and settling scores. A word from the butler can ruin a footman's career. A rumour from a lady's maid can destroy a housemaid's reputation. Despite the hierarchies and rivalries, there's also solidarity. They're all trapped in the same system, working brutal hours for low pay, subject to the whims of employers who see them as interchangeable. They cover for each other when someone makes a mistake, share food when someone's hungry, and offer comfort when someone's homesick. They run your house, manage your life, and keep your secrets. And you'll never know their names, their dreams, or the complex, brutal world they navigate every day just below your feet. In Edwardian society, your title matters more than your character. Dukes outrank earls, earls outrank viscounts, and everyone outranks Americans no matter how rich they are. The British aristocracy operates on a strict hierarchy that makes medieval feudalism look relaxed. At the very top sits the royal family, untouchable, divine, and slightly inbred. Everyone else is ranked below them in descending order of importance, and every inch of that descent is measured, catalogued, and obsessed over. Dukes are the highest rank of nobility below royalty. There are very few of them, maybe 24 in all of England, and they know they're special. A duke is addressed as Your Grace, never my lord, and his wife is Her Grace, the Duchess. Their children carry courtesy titles. The eldest son is a Marquess or Earl. Younger sons are Lord First Name, and daughters are Lady First Name. Everyone else must curtsy or bow. Marquesses come next, then Earls, then Viscounts, then Barons. Each rank has specific forms of address, specific privileges, and specific expectations. Getting it wrong is a social disaster. Call a Viscount my lord when you should have said Lord Last Name, and you've just announced to everyone that you're poorly bred. Baronets and knights are technically not peers, they're commoners with titles, which is somehow both prestigious and slightly embarrassing. A baronet is Sir First Name Last Name, and his wife is Lady Last Name. A knight is the same, but the title dies with him instead of passing to his son. It's a participation trophy for the upper middle class. Then there are the untitled gentry, people with land, money and good breeding but no title. They're Mr. and Mrs., which is fine in theory but devastating in practice, because it means you're lumped in with everyone else, from wealthy bankers to country doctors, and finally at the bottom of the upper class are the nouveau riche, industrialists, bankers, merchants who've made fortunes in trade. They might have more money than dukes, but they'll never have titles, breeding or acceptance. They're useful for their wealth and their daughters, who can be married off to titled men in exchange for cash infusions, but they'll never truly belong. Rank determines everything. Where you sit at dinner, the highest-ranking woman sits to the right of the host, the highest-ranking man to the right of the hostess. Who enters a room first? Who gets introduced to whom? Who speaks first? It's exhausting, and it's non-negotiable. Americans are a particular problem. They have money, often obscene amounts of it, but no titles and no understanding of British social hierarchy. American heiresses marry into British aristocracy with alarming frequency. Consuelo Vanderbilt becomes Duchess of Marlborough, for example, bringing millions of dollars to prop up crumbling estates, but they're never quite accepted. They're too loud, too informal, too American. The British aristocracy takes a perverse pleasure in teaching Americans the rules, then mocking them for not knowing the rules in the first place. She called the Duchess Mrs., can you imagine? Well, what do you expect from Americans? They don't even have proper footmen. Invitations must be worded precisely based on rank. Seating charts are agonized over for days. Precedence, who walks ahead of whom in processions, is determined by a complex formula involving title, age, and proximity to the monarch. Arguments over precedence have ended friendships and started feuds. Women derive their rank from their husbands or fathers. Marry up and your status rises. Marry down and you've committed social suicide. A duke's daughter who marries a commoner loses her lady title and becomes Mrs., a devastating demotion that society will never let her forget. The obsession with rank extends to the servants. An earl's butler outranks a baron's butler. A duchess's lady's maid has more prestige than a countess's. Even below stairs, the aristocratic hierarchy is replicated and enforced. And God help you if you forget someone's title. Refer to a countess as Mrs., and you've just insulted 3 generations of her family. Call a baron's wife lady first name instead of lady last name, and you've announced you don't know the difference between a peer's wife and a peer's daughter. The irony is that by the Edwardian era, many titled aristocrats are broke. Their estates are mortgaged, their incomes are dwindling, and they're selling off art and land just to keep up appearances. Meanwhile, untitled industrialists are buying those estates, modernising them, and actually making them profitable. But none of that matters. A duke who's bankrupt still outranks a millionaire banker. Because in Edwardian England, breeding trumps wealth, titles trump talent, and where you sit at dinner is more important than who you are as a person. When you travel, you don't pack light. You bring trunks, servants, and sometimes entire carriages of luggage. A weekend trip requires the same preparation as a military campaign. Let's say you're invited to a country house party for the weekend, just 3 days away from home, Friday to Monday. You'd think packing would be simple. You'd be wrong. First, there's the question of what to bring. You'll need multiple outfits for each day because changing clothes isn't optional, it's mandatory. Friday, travelling clothes for the journey, tea dress for arrival tea, evening gown for dinner. Saturday, morning dress, walking dress for afternoon activities, tea gown, evening gown for dinner, possibly a ball gown if there's dancing. Sunday, church clothes, luncheon dress, tea gown, simpler evening dress. Monday, travelling clothes for the journey home. That's at least 10 to 12 complete outfits, each requiring matching accessories, shoes, gloves, hats, jewellery, stockings, undergarments. Oh, and you'll need a different corset for daytime and evening because day corsets and evening corsets are apparently different species. Each outfit must be packed carefully in tissue paper to prevent wrinkles. Gowns are laid flat in steamer, trunks, enormous leather-bound cases the size of coffins. Hats go in special hat boxes, round or oval, stacked carefully to avoid crushing the feathers, flowers and structural engineering that holds them together. Shoes, gloves and accessories are packed in smaller cases. Jewellery goes in a locked case that your lady's maid will guard with her life. Toiletries, brushes, combs, perfumes, powders fill yet another case. You'll also need your own bed linens if you're particular, books if you read, writing materials if you correspond. For a weekend you might pack 3 to 5 trunks plus hat boxes plus a dressing case, and that's just for you. Your lady's maid packs separately. She needs her own clothes, her own toiletries, and all the tools of her trade. Irons, sewing supplies, stain removers, extra buttons, ribbon, hairpins, and curling tongs. She'll carry a smaller trunk, a carpet bag, and a sense of deep resentment at having to do all this work for a weekend she won't enjoy. If you're a man, you pack slightly less, but not much. Multiple suits, smoking jackets, dressing gowns, sporting clothes for shooting or hunting, evening wear. Your valet packs his own trunk with clothes and supplies, brushes for your suits, polish for your shoes, razors for shaving, cufflinks, collar studs, and whatever else you might need. Now, how does all this luggage get to your destination? If you're travelling by train, it's sent ahead. Your servants coordinate with the railway, hiring porters to load everything into the luggage van. At the destination, more porters unload it, and it's transported by cart or carriage to the country house. If you're travelling by car, a new and exciting option by the Edwardian era. The luggage is strapped to the roof, the back, and possibly a trailer. Early motorcars are not known for their storage capacity, so a weekend trip might require 2 cars, one for people, one for luggage. When you arrive at the country house, your luggage is whisked away by servants. Your trunks are carried to your assigned bedroom, where your lady's maid or valet unpacks everything, hanging dresses, arranging accessories, setting out toiletries. You never touch your own luggage. That would be absurd. But here's the thing. Everyone else is doing the same thing. A house party with 20 guests means 40 to 50 servants accompanying them, plus 100 trunks, hat boxes, and cases filling the halls. The servants' quarters are packed. The luggage rooms are overflowing. Below stairs is chaos. The host servants and the guest servants negotiate territory, storage, and schedules. My lady needs her dress pressed before dinner. Well, my gentleman requires the iron first. Tensions run high, alliances form, feuds erupt over ironing boards and hot water, and if something is forgotten, a favourite gown, a specific pair of gloves, panic ensues. Can it be sent from London in time? Can something be borrowed? Can a maid sew an emergency replacement overnight? These are the crises that define Edwardian travel. When the weekend ends, the entire process reverses. Trunks are repacked, cases are closed, and the caravan of luggage begins its journey home. Your lady's maid ensures nothing is left behind, though inevitably something is. A hairbrush, a handkerchief, a pair of gloves that fell behind a dresser. Travelling light isn't an option. Travelling efficiently isn't possible. Travelling in Edwardian England is an elaborate, exhausting, luggage-laden nightmare that requires a support staff and the organisational skills of a general, but at least you'll be appropriately dressed for tea. Wealthy Edwardians are obsessed with sports they don't actually play: hunting, shooting, fishing, and watching other people play tennis. You're expected to attend, look interested, and clap politely. Let's start with hunting, specifically fox hunting, the most British of blood sports. You wake at dawn, dress in full hunting regalia, scarlet coat, called pink for reasons no one can explain, white breeches, tall black boots, velvet riding cap, and mount a horse that cost more than a house. The hunt begins with stirrup cup, sherry or slow gin served while still mounted, because dismounting would be admitting you're not ready. Then the hounds are released, the horn sounds, and you're off, galloping across fields, jumping hedges, and trying not to fall off and die. The goal is to chase a fox until the hounds catch and kill it. It's supposed to be exhilarating, traditional, and character building. Mostly it's cold, muddy, and terrifying. Horses stumble, riders fall, bones break. Every season, someone ends up seriously injured or dead. But you attend because not attending suggests you're either poor, foreign, or morally opposed to killing small animals for sport. All 3 are social death sentences. Shooting is slightly less dangerous but equally absurd. Shooting parties involve standing in a field while beaters drive game birds, pheasants, grouse, partridge toward you. You shoot them as they fly overhead, ideally hitting multiple birds in rapid succession. The birds are bred specifically for this purpose, raised in pens, then released so wealthy men can kill them and pretend they're outdoorsmen. A good shooting party might kill hundreds of birds in a single day. The birds are collected, counted, and displayed in neat rows like trophies. Some are eaten, most are given away, and many just rot because there are too many to use. You're expected to bring your own gun, a matched pair of shotguns actually, because reloading takes time and you can't be expected to pause between kills. Your loader stands behind you, handing you freshly loaded guns like you're in a very posh, very violent relay race. Between drives, there's luncheon in a tent or pavilion, champagne, cold meats, pâté, game pie. You eat standing up, gun still in hand, discussing the morning's kills with the enthusiasm of a war debrief, Fishing is the quietest of the three, but no less ritualized. Fly fishing for salmon or trout requires specialized equipment, specific techniques, and endless patience. You stand in a freezing river, waving a rod back and forth, trying to trick a fish into biting a fake fly. It's supposed to be meditative, peaceful, a communion with nature. Mostly it's standing in cold water for hours, catching nothing, then lying about the one that got away. Tennis is different. It's a spectator sport for the wealthy. You don't play tennis. You watch other people play tennis while sipping Pimm's and making polite conversation. Wimbledon is the social event of the summer, but it's less about the sport and more about being seen in the right box with the right people. The actual tennis is secondary. What matters is your outfit, your companions, and your ability to clap at appropriate moments without actually understanding the rules. Rowing at Henley, yachting at Cowes, racing at Ascot all follow the same pattern. The sport is an excuse for socialising. You wear elaborate outfits, eat expensive food, and judge everyone else while they judge you. Ascot deserves special mention. Royal Ascot is 4 days of horse racing where the horses are the least interesting part. Women wear enormous hats, genuinely enormous, some spanning 3 feet, and compete for who can look the most ridiculous while pretending to care about thoroughbreds. The royal family attends, arriving in horse-drawn carriages and waving to the crowds. Everyone curtsies, everyone bows, and everyone pretends they understand what a furlong is or why this horse is better than that horse. Betting happens, of course, but carefully. Gambling too openly suggests you need the money, which is vulgar. Wealthy people wager for sport, for the thrill, never because they actually care about winning. Cricket is watched during the summer, long, slow matches that last for days and make no sense to anyone who isn't British. You sit in pavilions, drink gin, and applaud politely when something happens. What happened? No idea. But everyone else is clapping, so you clap too. Golf is emerging as a sport for men who want to walk around hitting balls with sticks while discussing business. It's not exciting, but it's exclusive, and that's what matters. The truth is, Edwardian sports aren't about athleticism, skill, or enjoyment. They're about tradition, exclusivity, and proving you belong. You hunt because that's what your father did. You shoot because everyone else does. You attend Ascot because not attending means you weren't invited, and if you actually enjoy any of it, well, that's just a happy accident. Garden parties are the ultimate social test. Perfect weather, perfect clothes, perfect manners, and if anything goes wrong, you'll be gossiped about for months. Garden parties happen in summer, when the weather is theoretically pleasant and the gardens are in bloom. They're held in the afternoon, usually from 3 to 6, and they're supposed to be relaxed, informal affairs. They're not. The invitation arrives weeks in advance, engraved on heavy cardstock. Lady Ashworth requests the pleasure of your company at a garden party. You accept immediately because refusing suggests either illness or social ostracism, and you're not admitting to either. Now you must decide what to wear. Garden party attire is its own category, less formal than evening wear but more elaborate than day wear. Women wear light fabrics, silk, muslin, lace, in pale colours, white, cream, pastels. The dress must be elegant but practical enough to walk on grass without tripping. And the hat is crucial. Garden party hats are enormous, broad-brimmed, flower-laden, ribbon-wrapped architectural feats that provide shade, make a statement, and occasionally poke someone in the eye if you turn too quickly. Men wear morning coats or lounge suits, light-coloured, well-tailored, accessorised with top hats, canes, and pocket watches. They look like they're attending a wedding, which is essentially what every social event feels like. You arrive by carriage, stepping out onto a gravel drive where servants wait to direct you. You're shown through the house, admiring or judging the decor as you pass, and then ushered through French doors onto the lawn. the garden has been transformed. Striped marquees dot the lawn, providing shade and shelter. Tables are set with white linens, china and silver. Flower arrangements are everywhere. Roses, peonies, delphiniums, carefully chosen to complement the natural garden without overwhelming it. A string quartet plays softly near the terrace. Servants circulate with trays of champagne, lemonade and iced tea. It's all very civilized, very picturesque, very Instagram-worthy, except Instagram won't exist for another century. You greet the hostess, compliment her garden, and immediately begin scanning the crowd. Who's here? Who's not? Who's wearing what? The mental catalogue begins. The event is part social, hour, part fashion show, part battlefield. You drift from group to group, making polite conversation while simultaneously judging everyone and knowing you're being judged. Lovely weather, isn't it? Yes, though I do hope it doesn't get too warm. The roses are simply exquisite this year, aren't they? Lady Ashworth's gardener is a miracle worker. Tea is served in the marquees, sandwiches, scones, cakes, pastries. It's a full afternoon tea spread, served on china, eaten with silver forks. You balance a teacup and saucer in one hand, a plate in the other, and try not to drop anything while standing on uneven grass in heeled shoes. Lawn games are sometimes set up. Croquet, lawn tennis, but they're more decorative than functional. Actually playing would risk sweating, which would risk ruining your outfit, which would risk humiliation. Children, if present, are dressed in miniature versions of adult clothing and expected to behave like tiny adults. They stand stiffly, smile politely, and long for the moment they can escape to the far corner of the garden and actually have fun. As the afternoon wears on, conversations fragment into smaller groups. The men cluster together, smoking cigarettes and discussing business or politics. The women gather in the shade, fanning themselves and dissecting everyone's outfits. Did you see Mrs. Pemberton's hat? I thought a bird's nest had landed on her head. And Lady Cavendish wore the same dress to the Whitmore party last month. Surely she could afford a new one. Cruel? Absolutely. But it's all delivered with smiles and polite tones, because overt cruelty would be vulgar. The weather is a constant concern. Too hot, and everyone wilts. Too cool, and everyone shivers. A sudden rain shower is a social catastrophe. Guests flee to the marquees or rush inside, hats dripping, dresses stained with grass. If the weather holds, the garden party continues until 6, when guests begin making their polite exits. Thank you so much. It's been lovely. Wonderful to see you. We really must do this again. You climb back into your carriage, exhausted from 3 hours of standing, smiling and pretending to enjoy yourself. Your feet ache, your corset is cutting off circulation, and you have grass stains on your shoes. But you attended. You were seen. You wore the right thing, said the right things, and avoided any major social disasters. Until next week, when someone hosts another garden party, and the entire performance begins again. The Edwardian wealthy have mastered the art of filling entire days with activities that accomplish absolutely nothing. It's impressive, really. Your day is meticulously scheduled, packed from dawn until midnight with events, appointments, and obligations. And yet, if someone asked what you actually did today, you'd struggle to name a single productive accomplishment. You've perfected the performance of busyness without the burden of actual work. Take a typical Wednesday. You wake at 9, which already feels industrious compared to your grandparents who rose at 11. Breakfast until 10:30. Then the morning room until noon, where you write 3 letters thanking people for dinner parties, accept 2 invitations, and decline one from someone whose title isn't quite impressive enough. Noon to 1 is spent changing clothes because you can't possibly wear your morning dress for luncheon. That would be barbaric. Your maid spends 40 minutes re-corseting you, restyling your hair, and selecting a different ensemble entirely. Luncheon lasts until 2:30. Then you rest, not sleep. That would be admitting you're tired, but recline on a chaise lounge while your maid reads yesterday's society column aloud. You listen with one ear, mentally cataloguing who's fallen from grace and who's risen. At 3:30, you change again for afternoon calls. This requires another complete outfit change because visiting people in luncheon attire would suggest you don't own enough clothes. You're made sighs, but silently, because sighing audibly would get her dismissed. Calls last until 5. You visit 3 houses, drink 3 cups of tea, eat 9-finger sandwiches, and collect enough gossip to fuel a week of conversations. You've learned that Lady Pemberton's daughter is engaged to someone suitable but boring. Mrs. Cavendish is redecorating her drawing room in a colour described as unfortunate, and the Ashworth's new footman is scandalously handsome. Home by 5:30 for your own tea service, because even though you've consumed nothing but tea and cakes for 2 hours, it's tea time, and tea time is sacred. You sit in your drawing room, pour from your own silver teapot, and review the day's social intelligence with your sister or mother or whichever female relative is currently living with you. 6 o'clock, time to dress for dinner. This is the most elaborate change of the day. Your evening gown is low-cut, heavily beaded and requires jewellery. Your maid spends an hour on your hair alone constructing an edifice of pompadour, pins and false hair pieces that defies gravity and good sense. Dinner at 8 lasts until 10:30. 12 courses, 3 wines, and conversation so boring you briefly consider faking a fainting spell just for the entertainment value. But you don't, because fainting suggests weak constitution, and weak constitution suggests bad breeding. After dinner there might be an event. The theatre, the opera, a ball, a concert. Or you might stay home for cards, music, or more, sitting around discussing people who aren't present. Either way, you don't go to bed until midnight at the earliest. You review your day as your maid undresses you, peeling away layers like an archaeological excavation. 14 hours, multiple outfit changes, dozens of social interactions. And what did you actually accomplish? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You didn't create anything, build anything, or improve anything. You consumed food prepared by others, wore clothes made by others, and moved through spaces maintained by others. Your entire existence is orchestrated by servants, while you play the starring role in a very expensive, very elaborate performance of leisure. But here's the thing, this is your job. Being wealthy in Edwardian England isn't about doing nothing. It's about being seen doing the right kind of nothing with the right people, in the right clothes at the right time. You're maintaining social networks, reinforcing class boundaries, and participating in an elaborate system of manners, customs, and rituals that separate the wealthy from everyone else. It's exhausting, meaningless, and absolutely essential to maintaining your position. Because the moment you stop performing, the moment you admit that perhaps filling 16 hours with tea parties and wardrobe changes is absurd, the entire structure collapses. And then what would you do? Work? Perish the thought. So tomorrow you'll do it all again. Different dress, same routine. Different gossip, same people. Different menu, same excessive consumption. An endless cycle of productive nothingness that defines your entire existence. And somewhere, deep down, you suspect this isn't what life is supposed to be. But you've forgotten what the alternative looks like, so you pour another cup of tea and pretend everything is fine. Love is optional. Wealth, titles, and family connections are not. Edwardian marriages are arranged like corporate mergers, and romance is a pleasant bonus if it happens to show up. Let's be clear, marriage in wealthy Edwardian society has nothing to do with affection, compatibility, or even basic human connection. It's about land, titles, money, and bloodlines. You're not choosing a life partner, you're negotiating a contract that will determine your social position, financial security, and family alliances for the rest of your life. If you're a daughter of the aristocracy, Your marriage prospects are discussed from birth. Your parents, particularly your mother, begin strategizing immediately. Which families have eligible sons? Which alliances would strengthen your family's position? Which marriages would bring in much-needed cash or secure a better title? You're presented at court at 18, officially entering society during the season, that annual marriage market where debutantes are paraded like prize livestock. You attend balls, garden parties and dinner parties, all carefully orchestrated opportunities for eligible young people to meet under the watchful eyes of chaperones and ambitious mothers. The goal? Marry up, always up. A baron's daughter should aim for an earl's daughter should aim for a marquis, and everyone should aim for dukes, though there are so few that the competition is murderous. For men, the calculation is different but equally mercenary. If you're the eldest son, you'll inherit the title and estate, which means you need to marry money. The estate is probably mortgaged. The house is falling apart and agricultural rents are declining. You need an heiress, preferably an American one with a railroad fortune and no understanding of British social hierarchy. If you're a younger son, you're in trouble. You won't inherit anything except a courtesy title and a small allowance. You need to marry an heiress even more desperately, or find a career in the military, the church, or the diplomatic service, the only professions acceptable for gentlemen. The courtship process is rigidly controlled. You can't be alone together, ever. Every conversation happens in drawing rooms filled with other people. Every walk in the garden requires a chaperone trailing 10 paces behind. You certainly can't touch. Holding hands is scandalous. Kissing is unthinkable. Instead, you exchange polite conversation, dance at balls, and try to determine if you can tolerate each other for the next 40 years based on 3 chaperoned conversations and a waltz. Love is viewed with suspicion. Marrying for love suggests you're impulsive, emotional, and lacking in judgment. It suggests you prioritize feelings over practicality, which is the kind of reckless behavior that leads to unsuitable marriages, social ostracism, and family ruin. The engagement itself is negotiated by fathers and lawyers. Marriage settlements are drawn up, specifying exactly how much money the bride brings, what happens to her property after marriage, and how much income she'll receive if she's widowed. It's less romantic proposal, more corporate acquisition. The wedding is a public display of wealth and status. Hundreds of guests, elaborate flowers, a reception that costs more than most people earn in 5 years. The bride wears white, symbolizing purity, even though everyone knows the marriage is a financial arrangement. The groom wears mourning dress and looks vaguely uncomfortable. And then you're married. You've met your spouse perhaps a dozen times. You've never been alone together. You have no idea if you're compatible, if you share interests, or if you'll even like each other. The wedding night is a traumatic surprise for many brides, who've been kept so sheltered they don't understand what marriage actually entails physically. Their mothers offer vague warnings about wifely duties, but no actual information. The result is often shock, confusion, and trauma that no one ever discusses. After marriage, you settle into separate lives. You might see your spouse at breakfast and dinner. You share a house but rarely share time. He has his clubs, his mistresses, his business interests. You have your social calls, your charities, your female friends. Children are expected, particularly sons, to inherit the title and estate. But once produced, they're handed off to nannies and governesses. You see them briefly before bed, admire their progress, and send them back upstairs. Affection might develop over time. Some couples become genuinely fond of each other, others maintain polite indifference, and some grow to actively hate each other, but stay married because divorce is social suicide. Divorce is nearly impossible and utterly scandalous. It requires an Act of Parliament, costs a fortune, and ruins your reputation forever. Women lose everything in divorce, their children, their property, their social position. Men fare better, but still face ostracism. So unhappy couples stay married, living separate lives in the same house. They take lovers discreetly, maintaining the appearance of propriety while conducting affairs that everyone knows about but no one acknowledges. Affairs are acceptable as long as you're discreet. Sleep with whomever you want, just don't get caught, don't create scandal, and for God's sake, make sure any children born look enough like your spouse to maintain the fiction. And if love does arrive, if you marry for practical reasons and somehow, against the odds, fall in love with your spouse, well, that's lovely. But it's not the point. The point is maintaining social position, preserving wealth, and continuing the family line. Romance is for novels, marriage is business. Everyone is having affairs. Everyone knows everyone is having affairs, and everyone pretends not to notice. Because discretion is the only rule that actually matters. Welcome to Edwardian sexual politics, where the official rules are puritanical and the actual behaviour is promiscuous, as long as you follow one golden rule: don't get caught. King Edward VII himself set the tone. He had mistresses throughout his marriage, famous actresses, society beauties, even his friends' wives. Everyone knew. His wife, Queen Alexandra, knew. And everyone pretended not to know because acknowledging it publicly would be vulgar. The aristocracy followed suit. Affairs are not just common, they're expected, particularly for men. A man who remains faithful to his wife is considered either deeply in love, suspicious, or lacking in masculinity, embarrassing. Taking a mistress proves you're virile, powerful, and properly aristocratic. For women, the rules are different, as always. Wives are expected to remain faithful until they've produced an heir and a spare, at least 2 sons to secure the succession. After that, discreet affairs are tolerated, even tacitly accepted, as long as you're careful. Country house parties are essentially organised opportunities for infidelity. The host assigns bedrooms, and everyone knows that room assignments are strategic. Your lover's bedroom is conveniently located near yours. The hallway between you is dark, quiet, and travelled only by those who know the house well. Late at night, after everyone has retired, well-dressed figures tiptoe through corridors, tapping softly on doors, slipping into rooms that aren't their own. Servants know, they see everything, but they're paid to be blind and deaf to the nocturnal wanderings of their employers. There are rules, of course. Always wait until after midnight. Never visit. Someone whose spouse is in the next room. Don't linger past dawn. Return to your own room before the servants arrive to light the fires. And for God's sake, remember which door is which. Stumbling into the wrong bedroom is a scandal waiting to happen. One famous story involves a gentleman who accidentally entered the wrong room and climbed into bed with an elderly bishop instead of his lover. The bishop, unimpressed, sent him away with a lecture on morality. The gentleman's reputation never recovered. For married women, affairs require particular care. If you become pregnant, the child must be plausibly your husband's. Timing is everything. Affairs are paused during certain times of the month, resumed carefully, and managed with a level of calculation that would impress a military strategist. Some children of the aristocracy are almost certainly not fathered by the men listed on their birth certificates. But as long as they look reasonably similar and no one makes a fuss, the fiction is maintained. Mistresses occupy a strange social position. If you're a man's acknowledged mistress, particularly if you're an actress or courtesan, you're kept in a separate house, given an allowance, and paraded at events where wives won't be present. You're expensive, decorative, and temporary. Famous mistresses become celebrities of a sort. Lily Langtry, actress and mistress to King Edward VII, was photographed, discussed, and admired. Her dresses were copied, her beauty praised, and her position envied by some, condemned by others. But woe to the woman who actually falls in love with her lover and expects him to leave his wife. That's not how this works. Marriages are permanent contracts. Affairs are temporary pleasures. Confusing the two is a catastrophic error. If an affair becomes public, the consequences are severe, especially for women. A woman caught in flagrante delicto can be divorced, stripped of her children, and exiled from society. Her name becomes synonymous with scandal, invitations dry up, former friends cut her dead in the street, men face fewer consequences, a divorced man might be considered slightly scandalous, even rakish, which sometimes enhances his reputation. He can remarry, often to a younger woman with a fortune. He keeps his children, his property, and his social position. Society has a short memory for male indiscretion, but an elephant's memory for female scandal. A woman involved in a publicised affair 20 years ago is still whispered about. A man with the same history is just a man. Blackmail is a constant threat. Letters, photographs, witnesses, any evidence of an affair can be used for extortion. Some professional blackmailers make entire careers targeting the wealthy and indiscreet. And then there are the legitimate scandals, the affairs so public, so brazen, or so badly managed that they can't be ignored. Divorce cases that go to court become public entertainment. Newspapers print every salacious detail. Crowds gather. Outside courtrooms, reputations are destroyed in print. The most famous scandals involve titled aristocrats, which makes them even more delicious. When a duchess runs off with a younger man, it's not just gossip, it's a national story. When a lord is cited in a divorce case, complete with graphic testimony about hotel rooms and private detectives, it's front-page news. But most affairs remain secret, or at least officially unacknowledged. The system works because everyone benefits from maintaining the fiction. Admit your spouse is unfaithful, and you're admitting your marriage is a failure. Accuse someone else of adultery, and you're admitting you paid attention to something you should have politely ignored. So the affairs continue, conducted in country houses and London flats, whispered about in drawing rooms and servants' halls, known to everyone and acknowledged by no one. It's hypocrisy elevated to an art form. And in Edwardian England, that's just called civilization. The London season is a marathon of balls, operas, races and garden parties, designed to marry off daughters and maintain social dominance. It's exhausting, expensive and absolutely mandatory. The season runs from late April to early August, when fashionable society abandons their country estates and descends on London like a well-dressed plague. The entire upper class relocates to their London townhouses for 3 months of relentless socialising with one primary goal: marriage. If you're a young woman, the season is your moment. You've been prepared for this your entire life. Years of lessons in deportment, dancing, French, music, and the art of appearing simultaneously charming and modest have led to this. You're brought out, presented at court to the king and queen in a ceremony so formal it requires weeks of practice. You wear white naturally, with mandatory 3 white ostrich feathers in your hair and a train precisely 3 yards long. You practice your curtsy until your knees ache. When the moment arrives, you walk backward out of the throne room without tripping on your train, which is harder than it sounds. Congratulations, you're now officially out and eligible for marriage. Let the nightmare begin. The season operates on a punishing schedule. During peak weeks, you might attend 3 or 4 events per day. Morning calls from 11 to 1, luncheon parties at 2, afternoon garden parties at 4, dinner at 8, a ball from 10 until 3 in the morning. Then you stumble home, sleep for 4 hours, and do it again. Your mother manages everything with the intensity of a military commander. She tracks invitations, monitors which young men show interest, and steers you towards suitable matches while steering you away from unsuitable ones. Suitable means titled, wealthy, and from a good family. Unsuitable means anything else. The balls are the main event. Hundreds of guests packed into overheated ballrooms dancing until dawn. You wear a different gown to each ball because wearing the same dress twice suggests poverty, which is worse than death. Each ball has a dance card, a small decorative card where gentlemen sign up to dance with you. Your mother scrutinizes this card like it's a military dossier. Who asked for a dance? Which dances did he request? Did he request 2 dances? 2 dances suggests serious interest. 3 dances would be scandalous. You dance the waltz, the polka, the quadrille, the cotillion. Your feet blister inside your silk slippers. Your corset makes breathing difficult. The rooms are so hot that ladies faint regularly, sometimes genuinely, sometimes strategically to attract attention. Between dances, you're escorted to the supper room for champagne and delicate foods you're too nervous to eat. Your chaperone, usually your mother or an aunt, hovers nearby, monitoring every conversation, every glance, every interaction with potential suitors. The season also includes royal ascot, where everyone wears elaborate hats and pretends to care about horses, the Derby at Epsom Downs, equally horse-focused, Henley Regatta, which is about rowing, theoretically, the opera, where you're seen more than you see, garden parties at Buckingham Palace if you're sufficiently well connected. Every event is an opportunity for inspection. Young women are evaluated like prize cattle. Appearance, breeding, dowry, family connections, temperament. Too pretty makes you a threat. Too plain makes you unmarketable. Too smart makes you difficult. Too dim makes you boring. The gossip is relentless. The Cavendish girl danced 3 times with Lord Ashworth. I hear the Pemberton daughter has a £30,000 dowry. Poor Miss Thompson. No one's shown any interest. Your reputation can be destroyed by a single misstep, a poorly chosen phrase, or even malicious rumour. For mothers with daughters to marry off, the season is high-stakes warfare. They scheme, plot, and manoeuvre to secure the best matches. They cultivate relationships with mothers of eligible sons. They host elaborate parties to showcase their daughters. They spread rumours about rival girls. The expenses are astronomical. Gowns for every event, each one custom-made and never repeated. Shoes that match each gown. Jewellery, gloves, fans, flowers. Hosting your own events to reciprocate invitations. Renting or maintaining a London townhouse. Employing extra servants for the season. A single season can cost thousands of pounds, money many aristocratic families don't actually have. They borrow, mortgage estates, or delay paying tradesmen just to maintain appearances during these crucial 3 months. And if your daughter doesn't secure a proposal during her first season, you do it again next year, and the year after. Each year she remains unmarried, her value decreases. By her 3rd season, she's practically invisible. By her 4th, she's a failure. Some girls never marry. They become the spinster aunts, the companions, the poor relations, who live with married siblings and help raise other people's children. It's a fate considered worse than death, a life of dependence, irrelevance, and quiet shame. For those who do receive proposals, there's relief but rarely joy. You've likely spent 3 months pursuing or being pursued by someone you barely know, someone chosen for title and wealth rather than compatibility. But you accept anyway because refusing means facing another season, and who wants that? When the season ends in August, society retreats to country estates for shooting parties and grouse hunting. The newly engaged couples begin planning weddings. The unsuccessful return home to lick their wounds and prepare for next year. And you, exhausted and possibly engaged to a stranger, collapse into bed and sleep for 3 days straight. It's called the season, but really it's a marathon, a marketplace, and a 3-month audition for the role of wife to someone important. And if you survive it with your sanity and reputation intact, you're one of the lucky ones. If you're wealthy, you don't raise your own children, nannies do. You see them for an hour before bed, pat them on the head, and send them back upstairs. Let's be clear about the Edwardian upper-class approach to parenting. You don't. Parenting is for the middle class and the poor, people who can't afford to pay someone else to do it. You produce children, ideally sons to inherit, daughters to marry off, but you don't actually raise them. The process begins before birth. When you're pregnant, you don't waddle around the house complaining about morning sickness. You retreat from society, perhaps to the country, because being visibly pregnant in public is considered indelicate. You don't announce the pregnancy. People simply notice you've disappeared and draw their own conclusions. Birth happens at home, of course, attended by a doctor if you're very modern or wealthy, a midwife if you're traditional. Your husband is nowhere near the birthing room. He's probably in his club, drinking brandy and waiting for news. The whole process is considered women's business, too messy and medical for men to witness. When the baby arrives, you don't immediately cradle it in your arms and bond. The baby is whisked away by the monthly nurse, a specialist hired just for the first month. You rest, recover, and receive congratulations. If it's a boy, there's celebration, the heir is secured. If it's a girl, there's polite acknowledgement and hope that the next one will be male. Breastfeeding? Absolutely not. That's what wet nurses are for. Women hired to feed your baby while you recover and maintain your social schedule. Breastfeeding would ruin your figure, tie you to the nursery and interfere with your life. Plus, it's considered rather animalistic, something peasants do. After the monthly nurse leaves, the baby is handed to the nanny. The nanny is a permanent fixture in the household, a professional child rearer who lives in the nursery, manages the nursery maid, and runs the children's lives with military precision. The nursery is a separate wing of the house, far from adult spaces. It includes a day nursery for play and lessons, a night nursery for sleeping, and rooms for the nanny and nursery maid. The children live there, eat there, and spend most of their time there. It's a world apart. You see your children at specific scheduled times. The most common is the children's hour, an hour before bedtime when the children are cleaned, dressed in their best clothes, and brought downstairs to the drawing room. They enter, curtsy or bow, and sit quietly while you ask about their day. They're expected to be charming, obedient, and brief. You might read them a story, listen to them recite a poem they've memorized, or simply sit with them in peaceful silence. Then the nanny collects them, and they vanish back upstairs. You've fulfilled your parental duty for the day. Well done. Affection is demonstrated through distance and discipline. Hugging, kissing, or emotional displays are considered harmful to child development. Children must learn self-control, restraint, and proper behavior. Coddling produces weak, spoiled adults. The nanny is the real authority figure. She feeds them, dresses them, disciplines them, and comforts them when they're sick or scared. She's the one they run to when upset, the one whose approval they seek. You're a distant, elegant figure who appears briefly and then disappears. As they grow, governesses are hired for girls, tutors for boys. These educators live in the house, teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, French, history, geography, and all the accomplishments necessary for their station. Boys are eventually sent away to boarding school around age 8 or 9. You pack them off with trunks of clothing and stern instructions to behave. You might visit once or twice a term. They come home for holidays, often feeling like strangers in their own house. Girls stay, home longer, educated by governesses until they're presented to society. But even then, they live primarily in the schoolroom, a separate space where they take lessons, eat meals, and prepare for their future roles as wives and mothers. Discipline is strict. Children are taught that speaking without being spoken to is rude. Interrupting adults is unthinkable. Showing emotion is weakness. They learn to control their faces, their voices, their very feelings. If they misbehave, punishment is swift. Sent to bed without supper, confined to the nursery, sometimes beaten with a cane or strap. The nanny handles minor infractions. Major ones are reported to you, and you deliver punishment with cold disappointment rather than anger. The relationship between parent and child is formal, distant, almost professional. You're not friends. You're not confidants. You're the authority they must respect, the figures they must impress during the children's hour. Some parents are warmer, of course. Some genuinely enjoy their children, play with them, and form real bonds. But they're the exception, often viewed as eccentric or overly sentimental. The system produces emotionally reserved adults who struggle with intimacy and affection. They raise their own children the same way because it's all they know. The cycle continues generation after generation. Your children might admire you, respect you, even love you in their way, but they don't really know you, and you don't really know them. They're heirs, investments, future alliances, but playmates, companions, or sources of unconditional love. That's what nannies are for. Everything is about appearances. Your house, your clothes, your manners, your family. It all has to look perfect, even if it's rotting from the inside. In Edwardian society, perception is reality. What people think about you matters infinitely more than who you actually are. You can be miserable, bankrupt, and trapped in a loveless marriage, but as long as it looks perfect from the outside, you're succeeding. Your house must appear immaculate at all times, even if you can only afford to heat and maintain 3 rooms while the rest slowly deteriorate. The rooms that guests see, the drawing room, dining room, entrance hall, are polished, decorated, and perfect. The rooms they don't see, leaking roofs, peeling wallpaper, and furniture covered in dust sheets. Servants maintain the illusion. They scrub, polish, and arrange until the visible parts of the house gleam. If guests arrive unexpectedly, there's a mad scramble to make everything presentable, while servants steer visitors away from problem areas. Your clothes must be perfect, clean, well-fitted, fashionable, and never repeated too frequently. Wearing the same outfit twice to major events suggests you can't afford new clothes, which suggests poverty, which is social death. So you rotate through your wardrobe carefully, keeping detailed records of what you wore where. Your lady's maid becomes an expert at refreshing gowns, replacing trim, and altering details so last season's dress looks new. But if you genuinely can't afford new clothes, you borrow from friends, rent from dressmakers, or simply stop attending events. Staying home is better than being seen in outdated fashion. Your manners must be flawless. Every gesture, every word, every interaction is performance. You smile when you want to scream. You make polite conversation when you're bored to tears. You never lose your temper, never show weakness, never admit to anything as vulgar as feelings. This emotional control is taught from childhood. Displays of emotion, crying, shouting, laughing too loud, are signs of poor breeding. Self-control proves you're civilized, refined, superior to those who can't manage their feelings. Your family must appear united and harmonious, even if you hate each other. Marital problems are never discussed. If your husband is having an affair, you pretend not to notice. If you're miserable, you smile through it. Divorce is out of the question. It's scandalous, expensive, and socially catastrophic. Better to maintain the fiction of a happy marriage while living essentially separate lives. Children must be well behaved, accomplished, and presentable. They're trotted out during the children's hour, displayed like trophies, then sent back to the nursery. If they're difficult, ill-mannered, or embarrassing, you simply don't bring them out. Your health must appear robust. Being chronically ill is acceptable. It makes you interestingly delicate. but complaining about it is vulgar. You suffer beautifully and silently, perhaps taking to your bed with mysterious ailments that require rest and sympathy, but never actual medical intervention. Mental illness is absolutely not discussed. Depression is melancholy. Anxiety is nerves. Anything more serious is hidden away, sometimes literally. Wealthy families send troubled relatives to expensive sanitariums far from London where they can't embarrass anyone. Your finances must appear solid, even if you're drowning in debt. Many aristocratic families are land-rich but cash-poor by the Edwardian era. Their estates generate less income, their expenses keep rising, and they're slowly going bankrupt. But they can't admit it. They keep up appearances by mortgaging estates, selling off heirlooms quietly, delaying payments to tradesmen, and marrying their sons to American heiresses. They host elaborate parties they can't afford. They maintain staffing levels that are unsustainable. They wear jewellery that's already been pawned and replaced with paste copies, all to maintain the illusion that everything is fine. Gossip is the enforcement mechanism. Step out of line, show weakness, admit to problems, and the gossips descend. Your reputation is dissected, your family discussed, your every flaw examined and exaggerated. Women are particularly vicious to each other. A rival's failings are delightful ammunition. Did you hear, lady? Ashworth wore the same gown twice this month. I've heard the Cavendishes are selling their paintings. Financial trouble, surely. Mrs. Pemberton looked positively ill at the opera. Consumption, perhaps. The cruelty is delivered with smiles wrapped in concern, presented as helpful observation. But it's warfare conducted in drawing rooms with tea and cake as weapons. Your reputation, once damaged, is nearly impossible to repair. A single scandal can haunt you for decades. You become that woman who, and the whispers follow you everywhere. So you maintain the facade at all costs. You pretend your marriage is happy, your children are perfect, your finances are solid, your health is fine, and your life is everything it should be. You smile until your face aches. You dress until you're bankrupt. You perform until you forget who you are beneath the costumes. Because in Edwardian England, the appearance of perfection is more valuable than actual happiness, and admitting otherwise would be admitting you failed at the only thing that truly matters, keeping up appearances. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep in your climate-controlled bedroom with your memory foam mattress and your phone charging beside you, maybe spare a thought for the Edwardian wealthy, those poor, suffering souls who had to survive on only 12-course dinners, 50 servants, and closets the size of apartments. Actually, scratch that. Don't spare them a thought. They had it coming. But do think about what their world teaches us. Because the Edwardian era wasn't just a time of elaborate hats and excessive dining. It was a monument to what happens when a society decides that some people matter infinitely more than others. When wealth becomes so concentrated that a handful of families own half the country, while children work 14-hour days in factories. When appearances matter more than justice, tradition more than compassion, and keeping up with the Ashworths matters more than basic human decency. The wealthy Edwardians built a beautiful world for themselves. Silk gowns and marble ballrooms, country estates and London townhouses, servants to anticipate their every need before they even knew they needed it. They created rituals so elaborate that getting dressed required help, eating required instructions, and simply existing in society required a manual. And beneath it all they were miserable, trapped in loveless marriages arranged like business deals, separated from their own children by class expectations and emotional distance, corseted, constrained, and performing constantly for an audience that was always watching, always judging, always ready to destroy a reputation over a wrong fork or a repeated dress. They had everything money could buy and nothing money couldn't. No genuine intimacy, no authentic relationships, no purpose beyond maintaining a system designed to keep them on top and everyone else beneath them. And then the war came and it all fell apart. The sons died in trenches, the servants left for better work, the money ran out, the houses crumbled, and the elaborate social structure they'd spent centuries perfecting collapsed in less than 5 years. What replaced it wasn't perfect. Britain is still deeply unequal, still class-conscious, still struggling with the legacy of empire and aristocracy. But it was better, more democratic, more fair, more willing to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, having footmen while children starved was not actually the peak of civilization. The Edwardian wealthy left us grand houses we've turned into museums, art collections we've made public, and a cautionary tale about what happens when excess becomes a way of life. They showed us that you can have unlimited wealth and still be profoundly unhappy, that you can surround yourself with beauty and still live in ugliness, that you can control everything in your world and still have no control over what actually matters. So yes, their world was beautiful. In its way, the gowns were exquisite, the houses magnificent, the rituals fascinating. But it was also rotten, unjust, and ultimately unsustainable. A gilded bubble that looked perfect from the outside and was hollow within. Tonight, as you fall asleep without a corset crushing your ribs, without servants judging your every move, without the pressure to maintain appearances at all costs, maybe feel grateful. Grateful that you can marry for love instead of land, that you can raise your own children if you want to, that you can wear the same outfit twice without social ruin, that your worth isn't determined by your title, your accent, or how many forks you can identify. The Edwardian era taught us that elegance without empathy is empty, that wealth without wisdom is wasted, and that a society built on inequality will eventually eat itself alive. They lived in mansions and died in museums. They ruled an empire and lost a generation. They had everything and left behind only the lesson, that having everything means nothing if you've lost your humanity in the process. Sleep well tonight, knowing you're living in a world that for all its flaws at least pretends everyone matters. The Edwardians didn't even bother pretending, and honestly, they don't deserve our pity. But they've definitely earned their place in history as a warning, beautifully dressed and perfectly mannered, of exactly what not to become. Sweet dreams. And if you dream of ballrooms and country estates, remember, someone else was scrubbing the floors and emptying the chamber pots while the dancing happened. History may be beautiful, but it's also a reminder that beauty without justice is just another kind of cruelty wearing a very expensive dress. Good night.